truly global international race, and well, we're getting ready for the anniversary next year, of course. In 12 months' time, we'll be back here celebrating the 50th Berlin Marathon, but we still have the 49th to bring you, and what a sight that is from our aerial shot. We'll be bringing you every angle that we can. There is the Gorsche Stern, and there is the man of the moment, world record Eliud Kipchoge, quite simply the greatest marathon runner in history. Emmanuel Petros, the German record holder, who's looking to seal his place in the Olympics next year. Of course, the Olympic qualifying times are up for grabs today in Berlin.
And Tigist Assefa, we saw there looking very calm, the 29-year-old Ethiopian, the reigning champion. When the gun goes, she'll be the defending champion. Set a course record last year by 2.5 minutes of 2 hours 15:37.
Little glimpse of Amos Kipruto there, who will be the main challenger to Eliud Kipchoge in the men's race. So 47,000 coiled springs getting ready to unleash themselves on this course. Their watches will be poised. Well, 12 months ago, it was all about this man, wasn't it? Eliud Kipchoge, who was looking to improve his own world record, and he went out at a frightening pace going through the first 5k in 14:14. He went through halfway in under an hour, the first man ever to do so. Belihu, the young Ethiopian, was the only man who could stick with him, but he ran the last 17 kilometers on his own and came through 2:01:09, taking 30 seconds off his own world record, and he could not believe it. Extraordinary.
Well, equally extraordinary was the improvement made by Tigist Assefa in only her second marathon. Her debut had been at 2:34. Last year, she improved on that by 18 minutes on the streets of the German capital, down to a course record of 2:15:37. And there's a rumour, with conditions perfect again this morning, that she wants to go for 2:12. She's apparently in fabulous shape, and, well, every reason to believe that she can get it right again.
But we could be looking perhaps at not one but two world records today. We shall find out. There, the split times wheel, of course, bring you as much information as we can. Certainly all the 5k splits throughout the race. We've got so much data at our disposal, but the key number 2:01:09 for Eliud Kipchoge last year, and confirmation that those are the average speeds, by the way. He actually went through halfway in 59:51, and a rare non-negative split.
Yeah, and it was an error. Apparently he'd been aiming for something like 60:40. There he is in all red, centre of the picture, Eliud Kipchoge. He was due to go for 60:40. Went out, well, the fat end of a minute faster than that. Said he just felt brilliant over the first 7 or 8k, so he stuck with that, and then came back with a much slower second half, but still smashed his own world record in 2018 by 30 seconds. Well, let's take a look at the course now. Of course, this is a well-known dead flat route around the German capital. They start here on 17th June Strasse, less than 400 metres west of Brandenburg Gate. They go round the Siegersäule after 600 metres, then straight for about 2 kilometres before heading up to the northern part of the course. They pass the Otto von Bismarck Alley, wonderful name that, at 7k, and then head over to the east of the city, zigzagging around Cottbusser Tor, and heading back westwards now through 19-20k. There's the halfway point, and then they're into that southwest corner, the second half.
Yeah, through Schöneberg in front of the town hall, 25 kilometres. Around the 28-kilometre mark, the Wild Boar Wilde Eber roundabout. Great atmosphere there with lots of bands. 30 kilometres, and then they go through the Memorial Church, the Gedächtniskirche, built in 1895, still a major landmark in the German capital, and then zigzags towards the finish, Unter den Linden, and from the Brandenburg Gate, 352 metres to the finish line, and perhaps yet more history.
Well, there's the scene. You can see right of centre, that's the Brandenburg Gate with the columns They will pass under that with 350 metres to go, as Chris said, and sprint towards that blue finish line. Start line down at the bottom of your picture with the first wave of athletes. As I said, almost 48,000, 47,912 runners from 156 nations for this 49th edition of the BMW Berlin Marathon. It is, of course, a World Athletics Platinum label road race, one of the Abbott World Marathon Majors, the sixth in that Majors series. They're looking to add a seventh. There is rumour of it being Sydney, but no decisions made yet.
And this, of course, marks the start of a busy autumn of marathons and road running. We've got Chicago, New York coming up in the next few weeks, and Amsterdam as well in October. The Siegersäule looking resplendent, and in a few minutes' time that'll be surrounded by thousands and thousands of runners. The countdown to the start of the race is on.
I just hope they move those two big yellow trucks. There's going to be a few runners passing through there. To the right of picture is the Tiergarten, just a glorious big forested area that is big enough to get a half-hour run in and more. It's crisscrossed by paths and lawns and little lakes and canals. It is truly a gorgeous city, Berlin. One of my favourite global cities because of the amount of green space, and yet a truly cosmopolitan, vibrant city.
And also such an important place historically and politically, of course. A brilliant place to come for a weekend, and of course for many people to run a marathon.
Something quite magnificent about that Siegersäule victory column to commemorate German military triumphs of years, of centuries gone by. And Chris, they do so much right here, don't they? Year after year, they just ramp it up a little bit with the presentation of that start gantry, the atmosphere, the way the music is pumped out over this last hour for the gathering athletes, the amount of information given out by the PA system. Every little detail is considered and tweaked and improved.
Well, we talk about marginal gains, don't we, for the actual runners themselves, and I think there are plenty of marginal gains from Mark Milder, the race director, and his massive team who do a brilliant job. The messages of inclusivity and the carbon footprint, of course, increasingly important, as it has been for the last few years, with lots of recycling, trying to keep the carbon footprint of this event as low as possible.
What's also interesting, Chris, of course, is that only last Sunday, a week ago, the track season of 2023 finished after those remarkable World Championships in Budapest back in early August. Well, the championships, the track season rather, finishing in Eugene on the second day of the Diamond League Series, the Wanda Diamond League Series. Last Sunday, coming to a fabulous climax, perhaps the greatest ever two-day athletics meeting that, and this is a wonderful way to carry on the rhythm of great track and field athletics and road racing. Eliud Kipchoge, very much the favourite, Chris, but Kipruto and any one of those next half dozen or so names could really threaten.
Yes, they could. Just to reiterate, as Tim mentioned at the top of the programme, 12 men under 2:06. Eliud Kipchoge, of course, the pick of those names, running here, looking for a fifth victory, and in the women, well, quality throughout.
Yeah, Tigist Assefa, the defending champion, is the fastest, 2:15.37. As I said, 6 other women have broken 2:20. Sheila Chepkirui, well, the 32-year-old Kenyan, very experienced, 2:17 she ran in Valencia last year. Look out for Abea Chutun, she's a 2:18 marathon athlete. She was third here in Berlin last year. Indeed, the winner and the third and fourth places are back this year from 12 months ago. A little bit of mist, but that's probably a good thing, Chris. Keeps it cooler for the runners. Tigist Assefa, the third fastest athlete in history. Well, an idea there of the status of Tigist Assefa. She is now actually the 5th fastest in history. Just looking at the ranking lists, there have been some remarkably quick times through this last 12 months. Indeed, winner in Chicago last October was Ruth Chepngetich.
Our next athlete won the Generally Berlin Half Marathon.
David Schoeneborn, one of the favourites for the German title, a 2:25 performer. The fastest German, of course.
This year's London Marathon, she took fourth
There is Jep Karui, very experienced. Fourth in London, back in April in 2:18.51. She's run over a minute and a half quicker than that. Once around 68 minutes and halfway, we understand. And Tigist Assefa, there she is. What a shock that was last year. She improved her personal best by a rather cool 18 minutes to become the third fastest in history. She is now the fifth fastest in history. She took 2.5 minutes off the course record. She said in a press conference Friday, "I'm not thinking about the world record." Well, there is a rumour that there is a different version of that.
Eliud Kipchoge is a history maker in Berlin yet again. So there we are almost ready. 48,000 runners poised, waiting to get started, and of course right at the front, the elite men, some of the best marathon runners on the planet. What a sight that is. Let's introduce you to some of the key names. Amanal Petros, the German record holder, the best German marathon runner of all time, looking to improve on his 2:06.27. He says he's in 2:04 shape. We shall see. European record, by the way, Bashir Abdi, 2:03.36, maybe in his thoughts. There is Amos Kipruto, 31 years old, here for the second time, going head-to-head with Eliud Kipchoge for the third time. And there is the master, quite simply, the best marathon runner the world has ever seen. Can he improve on that barely believable 2:01.09? He has won 15 of his 18 officially recognised marathons. He's a four-time Berlin winner, and were he to win today, he would move ahead of the great Haile Gebrselassie. So yet more records on the table here for Eliud Kipchoge.
The one big question mark, Chris, of course, around Kipchoge is the fact that back in April in Boston, he had a poor day at the races. He really didn't enjoy his day on the hills of Boston at all. Some people said he didn't get his preparation right, but apparently his preparation for this has been as normal, absolutely superb, without any problems.
Into the last 10 seconds before the start of the 49th Berlin Marathon 2023.
3, 2, 1, go!
We are underway. 48,000 runners, each with their own goals, their own objectives, their own backstories, their own reasons for running. What a sight that is. A wave of humanity unleashed on the streets of Berlin this morning.
Well, I just wonder if the pacemakers will do a sound job this morning. Chris, they normally do in Berlin. It's one of those courses where it's relatively easy to get into a rhythm, but it's so flat that it almost feels downhill, I guess, when you're fresh and the adrenaline is surging from the start line.
Well, a word on the pacemakers. You can see that Kilimo, Kipkemboi and Chepkwony are the three pacemakers who've been designated to Eliud Kipchoge. Also, three pacemakers for Amos Kipruto and Tim. They've been a little bit coy, haven't they? Both the leading men about what they're going to go out at. We've been given times for the groups behind them, so through 62 at halfway, but blank on our pieces of paper, blank against Kipchoge and Kipruto.
No, that's exactly right. And I think one thing we do know is that Kipchoge and his team feel that last year maybe there was, despite smashing his own world record by 30 seconds, he made an error with the first half too quick, 59.40. And I think the belief is that something around 60 minutes exactly or 60.20 would be better this morning. It'll be very interesting to see if they can tweak it, fine-tune it, and get it more right today, and that might yet result in a quicker time come his going under the Brandenburg Gate and towards the finish line.
So many questions of Eliud Kipchoge. You've already posed one of them. How will he respond to the disappointment of Boston in April? We shall see over the next couple of hours. What about Paris next year? I think it's fair to say, Tim, that remains his huge motivation. Nobody has ever won 3 Olympic marathon titles in history. That motivates him. That's why he gets out of bed in the morning. And I think the feeling is that coming to Berlin and then doing a spring marathon and then going to the Olympics in Paris is the most sensible way to do 3 marathons rather than maybe New York, which previously he hinted he might do. So in front of the Siegersäule, and they're already into their running. 12 months ago, the first kilometre was done in 2:49. So we'll keep an eye on the clock here. But Kipchoge looks very comfortable, doesn't he, already? Don't be fooled by the serious face. He only starts smiling when it starts hurting.
Is it a smile or is it a grimace? It's a useful quality to have. Keep people guessing about that. The first wave of the almost 48,000 getting their day underway. The whole city abuzz with the vast numbers of runners, because of course each runner brings several people with them on average. So restaurant bookings and everything else that you might need in your pre-race day routine is oversubscribed. Chris very sensibly booked a table for our dinner last night. But yeah, there is such a buzz. It's running through this weekend in the German capital.
Yeah, it is, and it's great, isn't it? When you get up in the morning, as we did this in the hotel, just people with their kit bags and getting ready. A real buzz of chatter in the hotel lobby and reception, and then you go out on the streets, and everybody has got their own little story. Different languages being spoken, 150 different nations. Terrific. 2:47 through the first kilometre. So, again, such early stages, but that compares to 2:49 last year. So it's breezy, Tim. And Kipchoge there, second left of picture, and then Kipruto is also in there as well.
Yeah, 2:47. Well, that's promising. Let me tell you that 2-hour pace is 2:50.5 per kilometre. That would mean getting to, well, 10k in 28:25 to halfway in 59 obviously, and so on. But promising early start. They always get that first kilometre a little bit quicker than the average required to clear out and get away from the pack. And already, of course, it's thinning out and gaps developing, and world-class runners having to watch this little lead group ease away.
Centre of picture there, Kip Kemboy, just worth noting, a very respected pacemaker. He paced London in 2020 and also Enschede in 21 when Eliud Kipchoge won there as well. So I think has got the trust of Kipchoge, and the other two, Chepkwony and Kilimo, have been assigned to the world record holder.
Of course, many of the elite athletes today in both men's and women's races looking for Olympic qualifying times. The Olympic qualifying time is 2:08.10, but even that doesn't guarantee you a place in the Olympic Games. It is an incredibly complicated qualifying system for the Olympic Games. The road to Paris, where the top 65 are guaranteed a slot for the Games. But yeah, huge concern in many nations about exactly how you can qualify for the Paris Olympic Games squads.
So we've got two groups you can see there. We've got Kipruto with Kipchoge. Korea is also in there as well. And then just a little bit further back, a group that's going to go through halfway, projected at around a 62 pace, so 2:04 pace. Chepkwony there on the right of picture, one of the pacemakers making his debut here. And Kilimo on the left. He's got a 2:08 personal best. He was 5th in Hamburg this year. Take us into the mind, Tim, of Eliud Kipchoge here. How is he looking to you in these early stages?
Gosh, I wish I could read his mind. Well, he's cool and calm and positive, of course, in the days leading up to the race. There was quite a reception for him when he came out of the customs area at the airport a few days ago. But I think he has to be confident. He has to put that Boston experience behind him. His training will have boosted his confidence if it did falter after that poor race on the east coast of the USA back in April, where he was down the field, finished in 8th place, I think it was, in Boston. 6th, in fact, just checking. But it was a really bad day at the races for him, and it was almost an optical illusion. You felt that watching him drop back as he did in London, 4 years ago, something like it, in the rain and the bad conditions. Although he did say he had a leg problem, around 30k, a leg problem developed in Boston, so maybe there was a good reason for that. But no, I think he'll come into this as positive and ready for a tough race as ever, Chris. And I say a tough race, he's used to racing against the clock, not really against too many opponents. I wonder if that'll be the case today. There's the elite women's pack, looking for Tigist Assefa. She wears F1 below her number. And there she is to the left, about third from left in the white vest. Assefa, easy to spot.
Yeah, just a question of knocking off these early kilometres. I think we've got a split time for the men's for the second kilometre.
We have, yeah, much more steady. A 2:47 opener and then a 2:55, which, is very early days, but it gives them a projected time of just outside 2 hours.
Well, Kipchoge has been keen to stress through his agent, Valentine Troy, that the routine, the preparation has been absolutely spot on. They haven't changed anything at all, and that means a punishing schedule from his usual base up in Kattegat at 2,500 metres. That's about 25k up from Eldoret, for those of you who know that part of Kenya. All the endurance runs, the speed work's been good. And Elliot in the press conference was very keen to stress how important the team is, the coach, the technical side, the social media, the diet. He's got a huge army around him, and he says, and it's a quote he's given quite a few times, that 100% of myself is not as important as 1% of the team. And he is very generous in his tributes to the people around him, without whom he just simply couldn't do what he does.
Well, the 3k point reached in 8:31. That was at 2:48, so they've gone 2:47, 2:55, 2:48. So they are back inside 2 hour pace. The projected time, finishing time, 1:59.42. They'll be hovering around that, I'm sure, for many, many kilometres, so we won't mention it all the time. But yeah, setting off at a nice, steady tempo. I say steady tempo, world record tempo, because we tend to get a little blasé about it, don't we, when Kipchoge's involved?
We do, and we were talking last night, amongst other things, about what it's like to run at that speed. And you and I have been on treadmills in various parts of the world, and I challenge anybody to get onto a treadmill and set it at 20 kilometres plus an hour and see how long you can last. It is absolutely frightening just to do it for 30 seconds or a minute, never mind for 2 hours. It really is super quick.
Well, Kipchoge at 2:47, 2:48 per kilometre will be well inside world record schedule, and if he gets it right, he'll get to 5k in about 14:10, 14:12, something like that.
And already, Tim, a gap opening up between him and this man, Amos Kipruto, and we were wondering, and just to remind you, they've both been assigned 3 pacemakers each, different pacemakers. And just to underline, neither of the two main protagonists had given any information about what sort of pace they were going out at. I think there's a few mind games going on there, but there is Amos Kipruto, who is the second favourite here. 2:03.13, his personal best. All he really said of any real note in the press conference was, I'm aiming to improve on that personal best. We shall find out.
Well, that little group of 5 has broken away really quickly. Is it 5? Yes, it is. Wow. That indicates, Chris, clearly just how fast they're moving at. Under 2 hours tempo. And there's the group to the top right of picture, already with about a 50-metre lead as they cross the river there.
Yeah, over at the Spree for the first time. They'll come back later on in the race.
Approaching 4k just after the river. And then on to Alt Moabit Strasse, to the northwestern corner of the route, which is basically a rather convoluted way of saying it's a clockwise course around the city, but it's not quite as simple as that.
Kipchoge was asked why Berlin again rather than New York, because he'd said quite openly he wanted to try and win all 6 marathon majors. Boston, obviously, as we've mentioned, didn't go well. And I think the feeling was that he wanted to come back somewhere familiar. Yeah, he's won here 4 times, he's raced here 5 times. And he knows where he is, doesn't he? He says it's like coming home. He knows the team right from the arrival at the airport. Let's just dip in to see how Petros is getting on, the leading German. Looking good. Amanal Petros, 28 years old, with the record at 10k and half marathon and marathon. He's the fastest German in history over all those distances. But this is his debut in Berlin, and it's his hometown as well. He lives in Berlin. What an opportunity for him to get that qualifying time. Born and raised in Eritrea, fled the country as a teenager. Spends much of his year in Kenya. He's been training up in the Rift Valley with a group up there, and only came actually back to Germany just a few days ago, last Wednesday or Thursday.
What's interesting, Chris, is that you saw him running the Brussels 10,000 back on the 8th of September. So what, just 2.5 weeks ago, he ran 27:47, their personal best. Now that would ordinarily be very, very good indication that he's in fine fettle. The leg speed, the turnover is there, and the strength is there. But I just wonder if that wasn't a bit too close to this. You don't get too many elite marathon runners doing a 10,000 a couple of weeks before.
No, that's right. Yeah, it was a little bit odd. But it was a great night in Brussels that evening on in the 10,000 metres. Meanwhile, Kipchoge has got his foot on the gas here. He really means business. And I wonder whether there's going to be for him a reaction. He wants to get that frustration of Boston out of his system. Totally different course, of course, Tim, with all the hills. And yeah, he was a little bit irritated, I think, when somebody suggested, had he shown the Boston course enough respect? Because he went off very quickly, and did he really die on the hills in the latter stages?
Well, and many people said, look, he didn't, that respect would have manifested itself by doing some adjustments in training, and apparently didn't adjust his training to accommodate those hills. Perhaps he felt that he does enough hill work as it is in his workouts. By the way, his 4th kilometre was a 2:50. That is exactly on 2-hour tempo, so they're still on schedule for under 2 hours at the moment. Approaching 5k, as you can see, bottom left of screen. And all looking good so far, touch wood.
Yes, and just to remind you, we will refer back to what happened here last year, which I hope you find is useful as a comparison, and we don't want to bombard you with too many numbers, but 14:14, look at the clock on the bottom of the picture. 14:14 is what he went through at 5 kilometres last year, and it's just inside. We'll wait for confirmation of that, but it looks very close, Tim, to the 14:14 of 12 months ago.
Yeah. 5k 14:11.
There you go.
It was a 2:50 again, so metronomic running from Kipchoge, and the pacemakers so far doing a great job. All credit to them. They've got Act 1 right.
Well, that's the first big tick. That's the first milestone ticked off. So just to confirm, at the moment, early stages, he's running inside 2-hour pace, and it's worth remembering that 12 months ago he was actually inside 2 hours, Tim, from memory, up until about 25k last year. I think it was only just after 25 that he drifted outside the 2-hour mark.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. Yeah, just after 25k. By the way, Kindi is Dursek Kindi, the 24-year-old Ethiopian. He has a best of 2:08. That was in Barcelona last year. I think he's maybe a little optimistic, going out at a tempo that is about 9 minutes quicker than his personal best, but who knows, perhaps it'll be one of those great Berlin surprises. And that's Kipruto, who's looking pretty comfortable. They're loping along in the second group. Kipchoge there, bottom right of that quintet. Such a familiar, bouncy style he's got. Let's not forget how long he's been around. 2003, 20 years ago, okay? He sprinted in the Paris World Championships on the track to win the world title at 5,000 metres. And rather coolly, he beat a certain Kenenisa Bekele. He beat Hisham El Garouj in that 5,000. He has got fantastic speed. Kipchoge, second to left there. Let's not forget, the fella's a 350 miler. Yeah. And that is the old Shutek.
And talking of range, leads us nicely onto Asefa, an 800-metre runner, the only woman to have run sub 2 minutes for 800 and a sub 2:20 marathon.
I know. I can't believe that. I mean, you look at Assefa's CV, the reigning champion. There she is in the white vest. She ran 1:59 back in 2014. She was a fabulous junior track runner. She ran 54 and bits for 400 metres. And then re-emerged. Never really got to grips with 1,500 or 5,000 on the track. Re-emerged as a marathon runner. She's run a pretty solid half marathon. In fact, last year she ran 3 half marathon races and she won them all. Not super fast, but winning's a lovely habit.
And it's just to put into context for those people who follow track and field throughout the season, it's really like Athing Mo or Keely Hodgkinson or Mary Morar in the next few years going on to run a sub-2:20 marathon. I mean, that's what we're talking about. Unbelievable.
The women, by the way, this lead winning pack have gone through 5k in 15:59. That was a 3:12 their 5th kilometre. They've gone 3:12, 3:11, 3:14, 3:10, 3:12 for 15:59. And 15:59 at 5k, well, that puts them on almost exactly 2 hours 15 minute tempo. So they're pretty much on schedule to hit that course record from last year, maybe go a little bit under it.
Well, that would be spectacular. It was one of the stories of last year, rather eclipsed from Assefa by what Eliud Kipchoge did, but don't underestimate how significant that run was, and it came out of nowhere. You know, we've talked about Paula Radcliffe's 2:15.25, didn't we, for so many years, and she was only just outside that time.
The 6th kilometre, Chris, nothing to worry about, I don't think, but after a 2:48 in the 3rd kilometre, then a couple of 2:50s, they've gone 2:53 to get to 6k in 17:04. That's the slowest kilometre so far.
But more measured, and that's the view that the likes of Kipruto have got of Eliud Kipchoge. And, well, he's got his own pacemakers. He's given them his instructions.
They're at 6.5k at the moment. They're on a little dip to the north of the course along Otto von Bismarck Alley. I just love that. That's a road name. Indeed, so much of Berlin has got these wonderful, the street names are just sort of echoing history. And as you mentioned earlier, Chris, the city is steeped in a rich and, well, glorified and somewhat negative history in many respects if you go back to the early part of the, or the middle part of the 20th century. But there are the leading men's splits, as you can say, 5k, 14:11. World record tempo. If it was steady tempo, it would be 14:21. So 10 seconds inside world record tempo through the first 5k.
Yeah. At the moment, the world record is on, but as we've seen so many times over the years in Berlin and in other cities, things can change very rapidly. The racing really only starts after 30 kilometres. So that's the view we have this morning on a cool, overcast, but almost perfect autumnal day for road running. The Reichstag there, left of picture with the German flags just wafting in the breeze. There's almost no wind at all. The Fernsehturm as well, which is another feature of this wonderful city in former East Germany, of course, approaching 7 kilometres.
That's the old TV tower we saw just then, built by the East Germans, allegedly, so that they could peer over the wall and look down on West Berlin. Not quite why they had to build something quite so tall, quite so grand, and it wasn't exactly subtle, but probably did the job for what it was worth. Here's that lead pack through 7 kilometres. That was a 2:48, so they've rectified things. 6k was a 2:53, and I think there was a slight rise over one of the bridges there, and then a 2:48 for the 7th kilometre. 19:52, their 7k time.
20 minutes of running, and they're already into the 8th kilometre. And just another name check, Dahesh Kindi, who is the only athlete who is keeping Eliud Kipchoge for company. Remember 12 months ago, if we wind the clock back, we had 2 other athletes at this stage with Kipchoge. Geir Adola, who won here a few years ago, and then a relatively unknown name of Andamlek Belihu, who stuck around for at least half the race. It was extraordinary that he was still there. Could Kindi, right of picture this year, become the Belihu of 12 months ago? I should tell you that his personal best in the marathon is 2:08.23. So this kind of tempo, Tim, is completely off the scale for this young man, Kindi.
Yeah, but he looks good, doesn't he?
Yeah.
He's powerfully built. I mean, there's a little bit of the Kenenisa Bekele about him. I wonder if he's been getting any advice from those legendary Ethiopian runners, Haile Gebrselassie, Kenenisa Bekele, and so many others. It's wonderful, isn't it, when you've got recent great champions, world record holders, medalists, gold medalists at Olympics and Worlds, as compatriots who live in the same city as you, because all the top Ethiopian runners live in Addis Ababa, but there's almost just pretty much no exception. You've just got those mentors locally that you can have access to almost on a daily basis.
Yeah, and the team spirit is not to be underestimated. Kipchoge then into his running. Let's just remind you, he's running here for the 6th time. 2013 was his debut. That's exactly 10 years ago, and he came second. His only defeat, beaten by Wilson Kipsang, who went on to break the world record. We saw that in the opening titles of the programme. And since then, he won in 2015, 2017, world record in 2018, and then last year again, 2022. And Tim, we were talking, weren't we, about the sole of the shoe coming off. Do you remember that year when he won despite the insole coming out?
Oh, both his shoes, yeah, and they were flapping around. We were all trying to figure what was going on during the live race, and it didn't really seem to affect him very much at all. He went on to win again. He's won 15 of his 18 marathons. And what I love about Kipchoge, they're second to left in their white top and red shorts, he is the complete runner, Chris. You know, he won the World Junior Cross-Country title just to give himself credentials in that particular discipline. You look at his track form, 12:46 for 5,000, 26:49 for 10,000. He's amongst the quickest ever at those long distances on the track. He has this incredible range.
I think nobody would argue that he's the greatest marathon runner in history. I don't think there's anybody else who can hold a candle. But when we widen that, Tim, to the greatest long-distance runner of all time, then you have to bring in Haile and Bekele as well. Do you think he's still...
Well, I think objectively you can make a very strong argument saying Kenenisa Bekele is the greatest ever. You look at all his dozens of world cross-country titles. I mean, it's ridiculous how many individual titles, team titles he's got, and then Olympic golds and world championship golds, and he's a 3:32 1500 metre runner as well, so he's got to lay a strong claim to that title. Here's that lead women's pack. It's a huge pack, isn't it? You get a lot of very good national standard male runners, of course, sticking to the women's elite pack because they know they're going to have pacemakers, taking them around at about 2:14, 2:15 tempo. So national standard male runners latch onto that and utilise those pacemakers, and why shouldn't they? There's the split through 6K. Course record pace 19:17, and there's 7 seconds inside that at 6K in the women's race. They've gone through 7K with a 3:11. Their last couple of kilometres, the 10th kilometre, the 6th kilometre 3:10, the 7th kilometre 3:11. So again, great job being done by the pacemakers there. Gobena looking very, very relaxed. In fact, loping along, head and shoulders above most of that pack. Gobena and Koech to the left there. Just doing his job as well. But it's a little bit more tightly packed than I would have liked. I mean, there's about 20 in this pack. It's very, very tightly packed.
Yeah, Chip Karui there will be perhaps the main protagonist to challenge Asefa. Very, very interesting runner. Just a third from left of picture there.
Quite contrast. We saw that split shot just then in this men's pack where you've got 3 pacemakers and 2 racers, and then the women's pack where you've just got this massive clutch of athletes moving along, tightly bunched, and that very, very slightly is a little bit more stressful, Chris. You're watching elbows and avoiding heels and everything all the time in that pack. You're having to concentrate.
You are. There's a lot of looking round. Kip Kemboi with the cap there, centre of picture, has been designated unofficially the lead or the most important of the pacemakers. He's doing a lot of gesturing. Well, this was, 25 minutes ago, the start of the 49th Berlin Marathon. Just to remind you, if you're just joining us, almost 48,000 runners from over 150 nations, a real international field, and, well, no words required for a shot like that.
Well, Kipchoge moving nice and steadily. Last year he went through 5K in 14:14. Today he's gone through in 14:11. He went through 10K in 28:23. They've gone through 9k here with a 2:52 clocking, so we'll have another comparison point at 10k in a couple of minutes' time. But he did go too quickly through the first half last year, 59.51, and I guess what would be ideal today, Chris, though they are on sub-2-hour schedule, so again they're heading for a sub-1-hour clocking at halfway. Be something around 60-10 maybe, just giving yourself that tiny margin of reserve so that you can come back a little bit quicker.
Talking to his agent, Jos Hermans, yesterday briefly in the hotel and just trying to get some sort of sense of where he was. And, you know, in the media, I think we sometimes think that everything's done scientifically, but I think it's important to stress, Tim, that, as you know, there are so many different ingredients, aren't there, that go into something that results in a world record. The weather is huge. How is the athlete feeling on the day? You know, do you get out of bed and think, I'm just not feeling it today? All those things. And often you don't know that until the race gets underway. And Jos Hermans at great pains to say, we don't even know what sort of pace he's going to go through halfway. Last year he felt great. It was just one of those days. And he just pushed on. And maybe another day today. So far, he looks as though he's in the mood.
Yeah, and of course, you can't criticise him last year, even though he went off the range, so to speak, off the plan, as we see them there heading through Kreuzberg and Mitte towards the 10k point. The leading men and the chasing group there. About 100 metres apart? Couple of hundred metres apart,
yeah. 200 metres between the leading men and the chasing group, and the athlete in picture just below Kipchoge is Amos Kipruto. So, yeah, almost 200 metres that gap between Kipchoge and Kindi and Kipruto.
Oh, Kipchoge there, those white shoes, second to left, bouncing along nicely. 38 years old, some people believe, as was the case with Haile Gebrselassie actually, through his wonderful career, that he's actually several years north of that, e.g. over 40, Eliud Kipchoge. And frankly, there's nothing wrong with that. It's all about avoiding injuries. Any athlete's career, particularly in the long distances, if you can accumulate those years of training and good strength, they go through 28k in 28.27 there.
Just outside last year's 10k split.
Well, that's good, Chris. I think that's a good thing.
Yeah.
A little bit more conservative.
Yeah, I mean, it's only by 0.04 of a second, but it suggests maybe they're just reining it in. Kindi, a new name, is the other athlete in the white, just to Kipchoge's right there. And then the chasing group, we said about 200 metres, equates to 30 seconds. That is a huge lead already at this stage of the race.
Well, Kindi is a bit of a mystery man. He has just run a couple of marathons. Just looking, in fact, a couple of half marathons. His best marathon, according to our stats, is a 2:08. That was in Barcelona last year. But there's different spellings of his name. If you try and look him up, you'll struggle. He's run a 59 half marathon as well. That too was in Barcelona last year. He's run a 62-minute half marathon in Hawassa, up in Ethiopia at high altitude. So that in itself is a bit of an eye-opener. 62 minutes in Ethiopia. Wow.
Yeah. 16 seconds then inside world record pace, as you can see there, after 10 kilometres. And just a shade slower than the 10k split from last year. Not by much, but I think it's significant, and it'd be interesting to see the next 15k split and then on to 20 and see if that little buffer that we've been talking about, the little cushion, just to put into context, 18 of Eliud Kipchoge's marathons have all been with negative splits, if you include his sub-2-hour marathon attempts in Monza and in Vienna, which are not officially recognised, but safe to say the vast majority of Eliud Kipchoge's marathons have been negative splits. And just for anybody watching who doesn't know what that means, it means the second half of the race is run more quickly than the first half, and that's why last year here was so interesting, because it was a positive split, which is very unusual. Amadeus Petros, the German number one, fourth from left of picture, the tall figure in the white vest there, is looking good. I'll try and bring you a 10-kilometre split time for him.
Well, 28.27 is only 2 seconds outside 2-hour pace at 10k, so he's pretty much spot on. And last year, when he went through 10k in 28.23, so 4 seconds slower at 10k. Now, these might seem like tiny margins, 4 seconds over nearly half an hour, but actually, you're dealing with Formula One cars here that are where every tiny 10,000th of a fraction is weighed up, measured very, very carefully. You're at the absolute redlining element or stage of endurance performance, and he has to get it right here. Kipchoge there.
Yeah, talking of redlining, we just got a glimpse there of the blue line, which is painted on the road surface. That's the shortest line, the official line, and they'll try and keep as close to that blue line as they can. So the three pacemakers with Kip Kemboy in the cap, the man in charge, doing lots of directing. He's doing a fine job here. This is the chasing group, about 30 seconds behind, around 200 metres. And then Amanel Petros there, further back, with one or two other athletes for company. And just to remind you, his goal today, trying to get through in around 2:04. That will be comfortably inside the Olympic qualifying time.
There, the lead woman, Asefa, tucked in, and plenty of the other top females alongside her, or around her, I should say. Sheila Chepkirui, you can see in the black beyond her, 31.45 at 10k. The lead women. Well, let me tell you that when the world record, or rather, she set her course record here last year. She went through 10k in 32.25. So she is 40 seconds quicker at 10k than last year is Asefa. She got to halfway last year in 68.12. She's on schedule to go through halfway in, well, about a minute and a half quicker than that at the moment. She is really shifting along with this big women's pack. And Chris, interesting, isn't it, that so many of these women are with her, and she's running at about 2:14 tempo, actually pretty much world record tempo.
Yes, and just to remind you of that world record, 2:14.04, Bridget Kosgei set in Chicago in 2019. And then, as Tim mentioned earlier on, we've had two performances in the last 12 months just outside that 2:14.18, Ruth Chepngetich in Chicago, and Amani Beriso 2:14.58. So the third fastest time in history set by Asefa here 12 months ago is now only the fifth fastest time. It's still brilliant, but she's on for something better than that so far. And looking comfortable, looking really comfortable.
Well, I'm just looking at Bridget Kosgei. She went through 10k in 31.28 when she set her world record. She blasted through the first half in Chicago 2019. 31.28. They've gone through here in 31.45. A more measured first 10k indeed. Bridget Kosgei went through halfway in 66.59 in Chicago 4 years ago. I don't think we're going to see a sub-67 first half here unless they go berserk in this second 10k segment. But it's probably more measured and more sensible running, I think. So we shall see. Of course, Kosgei, when she broke the world record, smashed the world record by 81 seconds back in 2019, Chris. Ran positive splits. She ran, a very quick first half and then a slightly slower second half. Negative splits is more common nowadays.
Yeah, as we were mentioning with Kipchoge a few minutes ago. So the leading men approaching 13 kilometres. They're on the most easterly part of the course so far, out in Friedrichshain, and they'll start to move southward towards Neukölln, for those of you who know Berlin well, and then into Kreuzberg and Schöneberg, taking in all the main districts of the German capital. All the while, the surprise for us so far, Dirce Kindi is still there on the shoulder of Kipchoge, looking comfortable. Doesn't look stressed at all, does he, for a 2:08 man?
And I suspect Eliud Kipchoge, to an extent, is wondering who the heck he is, but actually Eliud will be tunnel visioned. He'll be thinking about his own race, how he feels about the tempo. I'm sure he'll be computing in a relaxed manner what the splits mean that he's seeing as he goes through 5K and 10K. He knows things are going okay. And actually, maybe less than I'm saying he's thinking about it, because he has to trust those pacemakers, and he will be getting some information from the sidelines shouted at him too.
Yeah, we think of Guy Adola a few years ago when he was up on the shoulder and actually went past Kipchoge at 40 kilometres, and the look almost of disdain from Kipchoge on that day. Who are you and what are you doing here this late in the race? And then he just burnt off, almost impudent. We've got a long way to go. I think if Kindi is still with Kipchoge at 40 kilometres, then we have a story. Over the Spree again for the second time, approaching 13 kilometres, and they are knocking out metronomic 250, 251, that sort of kilometre time and time again.
Well, he's a couple of hundred metres ahead of the chasing group now. There's Kipchoge. Just looking up Kindi, as he's gotten his number, by the way. There's another version of his name, Cassie Dursa, 24 years old. He's run a couple of marathons. He actually debuted in Hamburg back in 2021. He was 5th in 2:17, and then he won San Sebastian that same year in 2:12. And then last year, 10th in Barcelona with that personal best of 2:08, and then 2nd in Cape Town in 2:11. And then he dropped out of Doha Marathon earlier on this year. So there's a little bit of experience in those legs. He's had 5 marathon starts and he's gradually improved. Those 4 marathons he's finished, 2:17, 2:12, 2:08, 2:11. So what he's doing here, moving at sub-2 hour tempo, goodness only knows.
Well, it's extraordinary, isn't it? I mean, we hope he finishes the race, but that is such a big difference to the tempo that he's normally used to running at. You just wonder whether he's at some stage going to start to blow up. The chasing group getting further away, now 300 metres behind this leading group. Kipchoge. There you can see the blue line that we've been referencing on the tarmac. So they're over the Spree once again. They're heading into Neukölln to Kottbusser-Tor. Approaching 40 minutes of running, and so far so good, Tim. He's looking good, isn't he? I mean, facially gives nothing away. That tunnel vision you referred to is absolutely there, complete focus.
No, that's exactly right. I mean, you know, you can break down Kipchoge's running style, and everybody's running style is different, and it works for them, so to speak. But some coaches will say, well, he bounces too much. There's too much time in the air. He's not a floater, as you would say. He's a powerful runner, is Eliud Kipchoge, but he has that musculature, wonderfully muscled legs, beautifully proportioned legs. Still looks like a track runner, doesn't it? You know, you look at those, the muscular shape for Kipchoge, second to left, and you sort of feel, yeah, there's a guy who can run a really quick 1,500 metres, and he probably could. Yeah. Frankly, I suspect if he turned his attentions to it, he could go back to the track and turn out some pretty good performances.
Just a word on the shoes. We're getting a good shot of them there. He was asked about shoes in the press conference briefly, and specifically about carbon plate shoes, and he said he normally uses those for his speed work and tempo runs and the long runs, and will have a different pair for race day. Slightly slower last kilometre, 2:54, and we stress that's no bad thing. We're quietly trying to just hope that he comes in halfway in something more sensible than last year. Just to remind you, that was 59:51. So 40 minutes of running, and they're already on their way to the 15th kilometre. Last year, the 15-kilometre split was 42:32. So that's our next major milestone.
Well, let me tell you that the women through 12k after a 3:07, and they're approaching 13k, are on 2:13:40 pace. They're on schedule, world record schedule at the moment in that women's race. And the bizarre thing, and we'll see them again in a minute, I'm sure, is just how big that women's pack is. There's half a dozen or so women at least in that lead pack, with many national standard German runners around them, moving at under 2:14 pace. That's a world record, remember, by Bridget Kosgei back on the 9th of October 2019. It was 2:14.04. That is the target for that women's pack. I think we can say that now. The halves for Kosgei was 66.59 and 67.05. So she was almost perfect split, actually. It was a very marginally positive split. It's a slightly slower second half. She got it so right on the day.
So the men on their way to the 15th kilometre, which will be an interesting split to bring you. We mentioned the lure and the attraction of the Olympic Games for Kipchoge next year in Paris. Just to remind you, no athlete has ever won 3 Olympic marathons. Bibi Bikili won in Rome 1960-64. Waldemar Czapinski, the East European.
How did Kindi almost run into the back of Kipchoge? The Kipchoge cut across him, I guess, and you could see the official there in that corner about 100 metres back shouting at them, go right a bit, go right a bit. The drinks are just after this bend. Kipchoge cut across right, ran across the front of Kindi, who had to chop his stride there.
Yeah, you won't thank him for that. I mean, you mentioned the point about how packed the women are. You'd have thought they've got plenty of space here, but they are running quite close to each other, even with all the space they've got. But that's the singleness of purpose, isn't it, of Eliud Kipchoge. And just going back to the Paris Olympics, he said, there's something boiling in my stomach, is what he described it as. That desire to get into the history books and become the first marathon runner to win 3 Olympic titles. Extraordinary achievement that would be. And this, I think, Tim, will give us some sort of indication post-Boston as to kind of what shape he's in at the moment.
There we are, 42.45, Chris, at 15k. And in his world record, he was 42.33. But we know he was too quick through last year, through the first half of the race. So that is probably just about perfect. 42.45 for Kipchoge and Kindi.
Yeah, it feels as though he's slipping back on last year, but we should just, again, reiterate that last year in the first half of the race probably cost him valuable seconds. He still knocked 30 seconds, of course, off the world record last year, but at one point he was heading for a much bigger margin than that. So about 12 seconds outside the tempo from last year.
Yeah, 42.33 last year. He's gone from 42.45, so he's, well, about 8 seconds, 10 seconds slower than last year. It is a nice adjustment. It's the sort of little tweak that was needed to the over-ambitious running over the first hour 12 months ago. Kindi, well, I wonder how long he'll last, Chris. Is it just a matter of time, or is he going to shock us and stay there through halfway and 30k and so on? He's checking his watch there. Looking good. He's a big lad, a little bit taller than Kipchoge.
Kipchoge is surprisingly short. He's only 5'6", 5'7". His fighting weight is around 52 kilos. I mean, that's pretty light. 115 pounds in old money. Great crowds you can see gathering and getting thicker and thicker. We should also mention the bands as well, who are strategically placed at different parts of the course.
There's that big women's pack that we've talked about. It's actually quite hard to pick out how many women are in that women's pack. Wagner Dessa is to the right there, just in the white vest, sort of tucked in behind. So Asefa very much to the fore there, left of picture. Won 7 out of races last year. She felt terrible in the Riyadh Marathon in her debut. Said she felt ill, but wanted the experience. That's why she carried on. That was back in March last year, where she was 7th in 2:34. And then, of course, just blew our minds last year with that 18-minute improvement from 2:34 to 2:15.37 to win in Berlin in a massive course record. Dessa, we can see more clearly there now to the right of this group, the 31-year-old. She's a 2:18 performer, was 4th here last year. She's in her 13th marathon, plenty of experience, and she's actually running her 3rd marathon of this year. She was 4th in Tokyo in 2:20 back in early March, and then she won Prague back in May, the Prague Marathon in the glorious Czech capital in 2:20. Funnily enough, she's one of those athletes who is absolutely focused on the marathon distance, Odessa. She doesn't run half marathons generally. Her personal best in a half marathon is only 72 minutes. Well, clearly with a personal best of 2:18, she's run quicker than that in several marathons, but that was back in 2015. She's only broken 2:20 the once, though, Chris, and yet here she is at world record tempo, just inside 2:14 tempo, Odessa.
Yeah, looking very, very comfortable indeed. I'd say we've got about 7 or 8 of the elite women all together. It's quite a bunch, and of course we've got male pacemakers also in the mix there. It's a very different scene, isn't it, at the start of at the head of the women's race than at the men's. But Asefa there, very nice, easy style, slightly forward leaning.
Always that jostling for positions around the drink stations. Asefa and Odessa, and getting there is okay, I think.
Sorry to cut in. We've seen it done wrongly so many times, haven't we? So many big athletes. You think like someone like Mo Farah, who made the transition from track to road and took a long time to get the technique right, to get the drinks
I love that, Chris. To the left of the picture, Asefa grabs a drink and then passes it to one of her pacemakers. Kebru, the racer, helping out the pacemaker. There's a new one.
Yeah. Like a snack, maybe a banana?
But she wants to be able to ensure that he does as good a job as possible for her. The gesture from her will be returned with interest, I suspect, over this next hour or so. 15k, 47.26. Now, 2:14 tempo would be 47.37. So they're 10 seconds inside. So they're about 11 seconds inside world record average tempo at the moment. Her splits here last year, her 15k split was 48.43. And she has just gone through, let me remind you, through 15k in 47.27. So she is, wow, way ahead of last year's schedule. She's over a minute quicker than last year at 15k.
Incredible. Well, at the moment, we are looking for not one but 2 world records still on the table here. There's confirmation of the women, so 13 seconds inside world record pace. And we already know that Eliud Kipchoge is also inside world record pace, his own world record set here 12 months ago, 2:01.09.
Just looking at the splits that Bridget Kosgei ran when she set her current world record 4 years ago. Remember, today they've just gone through in 47.27. Kosgei and her world records 47.26. You couldn't script it, could you?
Unbelievable.
Almost identical to within 1 second of each other at 15k after 47 minutes of running.
A breakaway here. Asefa and Odessa have opened up some daylight, Tim.
Yeah, they have, and that big pack, well, it seemed like that drink station a couple of minutes ago is what really broke it up. That so often happens. You quite often see packs break up around the drink station, a little bit of chaos as athletes jostle for position, try to get their bottles, and then things gradually concertina and they come back together in the following 2 or 3 minutes. But this, I'd like to see the camera pull back so we can see the main group behind these athletes. There we go. There is a gap, and a significant gap, back to the chasing pack. So we now have a breakaway. You're right, Chris. Asefa and Odessa. Asefa in uncharted territory, albeit only a minute or so, maybe a couple of minutes quicker than last year. But Odessa, well, her personal best when she was 4th here last year, a long way behind Asefa, is 2:18.51. So she's running about 5 minutes quicker than she's ever run before. And that is a big chunk. She's going to get to halfway, some 2.5 minutes faster than she's ever been to.
It's the Berlin effect, Tim. It does it to you, doesn't it? It does strange things. Pancake flat, perfect weather. Okay, the sun's not out, but they don't want the sun out. It could rise, by the way, to about 20 degrees later today, but that'll be after the elite runners have long finished. And then you have to feel for the 47,000 plus runners behind them, because they will be running in completely different conditions. But for the elite, they can probably get home and hosed in optimum conditions. Women through 16k.
Men through 17k with a 2:52. The 16th kilometre was a 2:48. So, and the 15th kilometre 2:54. So a few little shifts up and down in tempo. But 17k with a 2:52, and that 15k split for the member 42.44. And if they were on 2-hour pace, they'd be on 42.37. So he was 7 seconds outside 2-hour tempo at 15K, Eliud Kipchoge. And I think that's a good thing. I think that's just about perfect. It'll make him 10 or 12 seconds outside 2-hour tempo at halfway. In other words, 60-10, 60-15, something around there. And then hopefully he'll have the reserves to come back with a negative split. Could we see, Chris? I mean, we're talking about it sort of in roundabout way. Not only a course record, but a 2-hour clocking this morning. We have to start talking about that because they're approaching halfway and they're within shooting distance of that, so to speak.
Well, I think we should just stay calm, but it is on the table. There's no doubt about it. And of course, 1:59.40 was the time in Vienna in 2019. It wasn't recognised as an official race. It was more an experiment to see if it was humanly possible to run a marathon, 26.2 miles, 42.2k in under 2 hours. And Eliud Kipchoge proved that under certain conditions that was, but it's not a world record.
Well, Chris, I'm not sure why, but that 16th kilometre after 15k in 47.27, pretty much on exactly the same schedule as the virtual Bridget Kosgei, who could be running alongside them at 15k. The 16th kilometre at 2:59 for the women.
Well, the handbikers have just gone through the results there. 1-2 for France, Josef Fritsch and Johan Kai coming through in just outside an hour ahead of Vico Merklein from Germany. So the handbikers who set off a little bit earlier than the wheelchair racers and the able-bodied runners. And that's a great result for the men. A France 1-2 coming over the finish line just a few minutes ago.
Well, a gap appearing now back to Edessa. The fourth placer last year maybe has just had one slug too many in this second of 5 rounds, so to speak, if it were a boxing match, because that 16th kilometre, by far the quickest so far. They've been averaging, well, pretty much about 3:10 per kilometre, and then the 16th kilometre at 2:59. So incredibly quick for the women's just after 15k. And Asefa maybe wanted this. Maybe she wanted just ease away and be able to relax, not worry about opposition, about her race so much as her own performance. And that's a critical difference.
Ominously, Tim, a little smile, a little grimace just appeared on the face of Eliud Kipchoge, which tells us two things. One, he's comfortable, and two, it's probably starting to hurt. That's his trademark smile, and now he's gone back to his neutral expression, just utterly focused on the tarmac in front of him. He's barely acknowledged the presence of Kindi to his left, who, according to the script and all the stats, has no business to be there based on what he's done before. But of course he is there, and he's looking comfortable too. A reminder, his 5th marathon, and he's a 2:08 marathon runner, and here he is approaching halfway and still on the shoulder of the great Eliud Kipchoge.
Just a word of warning, Chris, the 18th kilometre for Kipchoge at 2:56. That's the slowest of the race so far, and the 19th kilometre has just come through at 2:54. So he's been running, I mean, the 8th kilometre is at 2:51 and then at 2:52, 2:50. He's been averaging about 2:50, 2:51. His last 3 kilometre splits, 2:52, 2:56, 2:54. There's been a little bit of a slowing this last 3k. We'll watch that. They're coming up to 20k, as you can see, bottom left of the screen, and then the halfway split will be hugely significant.
Yeah, 56.44, incidentally, was the 20k split last year, 12 months ago. Apologies if you're being bombarded and assaulted by lots of numbers here, but I think when, as Tim said, when you're watching an event where marginal gains are so important, you can read into how this race may unfold by the figures that we're bringing you.
Well, they have now gone through 19 kilometres. As I said, that was a 2:54. Kipchoge focused on the road ahead. Kindi to the right there in the white vest and red shorts, tucked in behind Chepkwony. hanging in there, and he's going to go through halfway in just outside 60 minutes, I think. And he looks superb. Now, he has run under 60 minutes for a half marathon, so he is a class performer, is Kindy. But there is still an element of mystery around this fellow, whose best is outside 2:08, and he's operating at a tempo about 8 minutes quicker than that.
Incredible. Incredible he's still there. So in 2018, Kipchoge went through halfway in 61:06, and last year 59:51. So we'll keep an eye on that. We're now looking at about 400 metres, almost exactly, between the leading men, Kipchoge and Kindy, and the chasing group, which includes, and we haven't spoken to him about him for a little while now, Amos Kipruto. There he is, who's a 2:03.13 performer, but now 400 metres behind, approaching halfway.
And that's a big chunk of time, isn't it? What, about 70 seconds, something like that? I mean, well over a minute. Of course, things can change dramatically if there's any further slowing from Kipchoge. And if there is that information reaches the chasing pack, they may up their tempo. There's 20k.
Yeah, 2:57 that last, so that is the slowest of the race so far. 57:12 through 20 kilometres, and that compares to 56:44 last year. So we're looking at nearly 30 seconds slower than last year. But as we've been repeating throughout the morning, that is no bad thing. It's much more measured.
No, if they went through 20k at 2:01 tempo exactly, and remember that would still be a world record, it'd be 57:20. And they've gone through in 57:11, 57:12. So there it is, 57:11, the leading men. Still in 13 seconds inside world record tempo. So let's not get too pessimistic. Just because these last 3 or 4 kilometre splits have been slowing marginally, the halfway split will be mighty significant. But Eliud Kipchoge still looking fine, Chris. And I think it's probably a good thing that he's got Kindy there with him.
Yeah, it's no bad thing at all. And just to put that into context, if he were to maintain this tempo through the second half of the race and improve it, we could be looking to him at the first sub-201 marathon in history. I think going sub-2 hours would be hugely optimistic today. It's not impossible, but so far we're looking at something inside world record pace, and we could be commentating in about an hour's time on the first race under 2 hours 1 minute. Approaching halfway.
Crowds out in really good numbers. Funny, isn't it? Because yesterday was a gloriously sunny day. It wasn't hot, but it was a lovely sunny day around the city, probably about 20, 21 degrees. Today, as they go over the mat there, that's the flying 400 mat for the wheelchair races. Yeah, that's a timed 400 where there's a financial bonuses for the wheelchair races. So they're a little way away yet from the 21k mark, and then of course about 100 metres later the halfway point. But Chris, I wonder whether Kipchoge has it in his legs today, once the pacemakers drop out, to go a second half in under 60 minutes.
And just to remind you, last year, 17 kilometres he ran last year on his own. The last 17k, he was literally just on his own. No pacemakers and no other athletes around him. And that takes some doing, and come inside a world record. So 21.1, remember, kilometres is the halfway point. So we're approaching that. That's a 2:53. So they've quickened up a little bit in that latest kilometre. And this will tell us. So we're outside the 1 hour mark. The clock, the live clock, right of picture. So already it's slower than last year. The question is, by how much? There we are. 60:22 at halfway.
I think that's just about perfect. I think his management team, his coach Patrick Sang, who incidentally has lost a lot of weight. He's doing a lot of running these days, apparently. I don't think it's a comeback, but he's lost a lot of weight. I think they will be delighted with that. That is pretty much spot on. If he can get to halfway feeling good, close to sub 2 hour tempo. You know, he's well inside world record tempo. Let's not forget that. So we're talking about two different things here. The world record, and he's way inside his schedule for that. And then 2 hours is the great holy grail, isn't it? Do you think, Chris?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, at the moment we're still somewhere between those two historic landmarks. The world record is on, and there's an outside chance maybe of a sub 2. Let's not get greedy. There's the chasing group then approaching the halfway stage, and they are just over a minute, Tim, behind Kipchoge and Kindi.
Yeah, that's what we thought. That's a big chunk of time, isn't it? Tadu Abate there with that sort of headband, that headscarf at the back of that chasing group, the 26-year-old. He's a 2:05 athlete, but he was 6th in Tokyo back in March this year in that 2:05. But he is well over a minute behind this little lead group, and that's a big statement about just how quickly they are shifting.
So into the second half then of the 49th Berlin Marathon. Here's how it started a little over an hour ago. Eliud Kipchoge going for a fifth, the record fifth Berlin title here. And so much quality behind, including Amos Kipruto. And in the women's race, last year's winner and the fifth fastest in history, Tigist Assefa, made a really good start. But great pacemaking so far by Kilimo Kipkemboi and Chepkwony.
4 out of the 5 in shot from Kenya. Of course, they'll be watching this on the big screens back in the Rift Valley, high up in the Rift Valley in Eldoret and E10 and Kapsabet. When there once or twice myself back in the late 80s, the glorious weather and the red soil that forever staining your shoes and your socks. Kipchoge will be familiar with that, and people's anticipation of what is building here in the German capital will be growing all the time in the Rift Valley and all over the world as these pictures are beamed out to dozens and dozens of nations, to millions of people. Assefa through 20k in 62.52. And let me tell you that when she set her world record, Brigid Kosgei went through 20k in 63.27. So she's about 30 seconds up, Assefa, on the split of Brigid Kosgei when she set her world record 4 years ago in Chicago. And indeed, she's well inside world record schedule.
She's looking very good as well, looking effortless. The really economic arm carriage with the thumbs pointed upwards, you'll notice, straight up to the skies. Tucked in, not wasting any energy at all. Really good cadence, and from that shot she looks as though she's barely breathing, but she is moving. And there we are, 41 seconds inside world record. And could she even eclipse that brilliant performance here last year when she really came out of nowhere to smash her personal best? So she's on her way, and she has clear daylight now over Odessa in second place.
And this is a perfect scenario for Assefa, isn't it, in a way, because she can focus here on the pacemakers, who, of course, when in a mixed race like this where the top women have male pacemakers, she can get help all the way through to the finish line, through Brandenburg Gate, through to the finish line. And that is such a big advantage. The lead men do not get that. You usually get somebody close to world record pace, whether they're running 2:1, 2:3, 2:5. They're on their own in the latter stages. They don't have any help. No male pacemakers can pace through 42k.
And if you're Brigid Kosgei watching, wherever she is, how is she feeling?
I don't know if Brigid Kosgei is watching, chewing her nails or clapping this marvellous running from Tigist Assefa on. But the 29-year-old here at the moment is matching the sort of virtual figure of Brigid Kosgei, the ghost of Brigid Kosgei alongside her, if you could picture her here, almost stride for stride. 20k, remember, here today. She's gone through in 62.53, and Kosgei was 63.27. So she's actually, well, probably about 150 metres ahead of the virtual Brigid Kosgei of 2019.
Well, this is building. This is simmering nicely on the streets of Berlin. We could have two very special performances. We've also, of course, going to bring you the finish of the wheelchair events in a little while. The world's best in action here on the streets of Berlin. And the conditions continue to be excellent. There you can see, we got a glimpse there of the lead car and the information that's given, including the last K.
Look at that half marathon split, Chris, for the women. 66.20 for Asefa. Bridget Kosgei's split at halfway was 66.59. She's nearly 40 seconds ahead of Kosgei, and we all thought Kosgei's splits 4 years ago were insane. We thought, what's she playing at? We never expected, of course, the world record from Paula Radcliffe, that was, some 16 years old back then, to be hammered by over a minute in Chicago. And today, I don't think too many have been expecting the world record of Kosgei to be broken. But at the moment, things are going incredibly well for Tigist Asefa. And Sheila Chepkurui, look, the Kenyan 32-year-old with the best of 2:17, is some way back at the moment.
So let's just recap then. In the women's race, Asefa 40 seconds almost inside world record pace, and at halfway, Eliud Kipchoge around 12-13 seconds inside his own world record. So at halfway in Berlin in 2023, we have not one but two world records there for the taking.
It is a race director's dream, isn't it? I know that Mark Milder, well, talk about chewing nails, he'll be doing something similar, I should think. Halfway, 66.21 is what I've got on this timing system. And double that, and there you go. It will be. She was hoping for a 2:12, Chris, and she's on schedule for a 2:12 and bits performance.
Well, we were getting word, weren't we, of 2:12, and I must admit, when you mentioned that, I thought, really? I was really surprised. Also surprising, Kindi. Let's just remind ourselves of this young man, Kindi, relatively unknown. Look at him, just glancing to his right. This is quite a contrast, isn't it? These are little subtle visual things just to bring you. Eliud Kipchoge looking straight ahead, down the barrel of a gun, not veering from left to right, but Kindi, just his eyes darting from left to right. It's a very, very different position for the two athletes as they approach 24 kilometres.
I mean, he's the mystery man of the day. There's Kindi. There's various versions of his name there. While we're on air, I'm trying to look him up and see different versions of... I'm seeing different versions. Derse Kindi is what I'm seeing in one format. Another is Cassie Dersa, born on the 4th of February 1999. He's 24, just over 24 and a half. He's run a couple of, 4 marathons before today. Dropped out of Doha back in January this year. But he's worked hard to get things right a few months later.
Also working hard to get things right, the fastest German man is just approaching 23.5 kilometres. Amal Petros, who's looking for that Olympic qualifying time, remember, of 2:08.10. And on this showing, he's going to comfortably get inside that, looking to improve on his 2:06.27. There he is, the 28-year-old, running in Berlin for the first time. It's his home city now, born and raised in Eritrea, a country he left as a teenager. Lost contact with his family for a number of years while the conflict was going on in Tigray, that region that had so much conflict until recently due to civil war. He's now back in touch with them and has made contact by telephone. So personally, it's been a very stressful last few years for Amanal Petros, but he's looking very smooth here.
Chris, he's been taken very much to the hearts of the German people. He won Hanover earlier on this year. He could have chosen from a lot of other marathons, but back on the 26th of March, he won the Hanover Marathon in 2:07.02. He was 4th in the European Championships in Munich last year, and those fabulous championships where Germany topped the medal table. And he ran 2:10.39 there to finish just outside the medals. And I think it was Richard Ringer, wasn't it, who won the marathon in Munich at those European Championships. And what a contrast. I mean, just a quick word about the ups and downs of German athletics. Not a single medal the German athletics team at those World Championships in Budapest just a few weeks ago. I don't know if there's been massive post-mortems as to what went right and what went wrong, perhaps more importantly, in Budapest. But that was a worrying sign to some extent for the European theatre of track and field athletics. Not a single medal for Germany. Who would have ever thought that if you go back through past editions of the World Championships? And yet, that was less than a year after they'd had a fabulous time in Munich at the Europeans. I know we're talking about a global competition in the world and only a continental competition at the Europeans, but you'd still expect Germany to have got some medals in the heavy throws maybe, or in the technical disciplines. Kindy that, being passed a drink. Chepkwony and Kip Kemboy, the two pacemakers left in there now. Kindy's still looking good. Look at those features to the man on the right there. Does he look stressed? Getting that drink, looks composed. Chris is right, his eyes do dart around all the time. Kipchoge in the background there, by contrast, eyes just focused forwards. Face gives away very, very little at all. Just stay relaxed in your head and shoulders. No dark glasses, no caps by any of these fellas. Keep it relatively simple, although those arm sleeves are interesting. All four of them wearing those arm sleeves. Now, on a morning like this, that's probably partly for warmth, but I think it also, and forgive me if I'm wrong, I think it also aids return of the blood from the extremities, those long upper body extremities to the heart. Just we talked about marginal gains earlier on, and the athletes and the techies behind the scenes in the sports industry working on these tiny tweaks that maybe can affect 1% of 1% of a performance. But you add a few of those together and suddenly it becomes a noticeable improvement. And of course, over a marathon distance, maybe you can convert that to a few seconds. If those armbands are worth 5 or 10 seconds, boy oh boy is it worth it.
So based on the 25k split, projected finish time of just around the current world record, 2:01.10. And a reminder, it was 2:01.09 this time last year. 25k, they've been through Schöneberg, where JF Kennedy made his famous Ich bin ein Berliner speech. That's a couple of kilometres ago, then across Friedrich-Wilhelm-Platz. And the highest point of the course is at 27 kilometres. I say the highest point, it's all relative. It's only 55 metres above sea level, and the start and finish are at 33, so these are very small numbers. It's pancake flat, and it's almost exactly at sea level. There's really no elevation to talk of when it comes to the Berlin course, and that's why it has produced all those world records over the years. 12 of them on this course, 8 in the last 20 years. The most recent, of course, 12 months ago. Kipchoge is still looking good. Kindy, just if anything, just moving slightly ahead. We've lost one of the pacemakers. Kemboy has also discarded his cap. So down to 2 pacemakers, and we have 2 elite athletes approaching 26 kilometres.
Now, interesting, isn't it, Chris? Because we've been talking about how that halfway split for the men, 60-22, was just about perfect. A little bit more conservative than last year. 31 seconds slower than last year, when I think we all feel he went too quick despite setting that world record. And we were saying, well, if he comes back with negative splits, then he will have got it right again this year. But about now, 26 kilometres and more on the clock. He needs to start winding it up, and I'm not seeing yet that acceleration. Remember, steady tempo for 2-hour speed is 250 per kilometre. For 2:01 pace, still a world record, 252 per kilometre. And his last 4 kilometre splits have been 255, 257, 254, 258. So they are now operating quite significantly outside 2:01 tempo. And at the moment, if they don't, I say at the moment, if this next half hour we do not see an acceleration, then they're not going to get the world record. And never mind about the 2-hour barrier. I think we can almost forget about the 2-hour barrier now, unless something superhuman comes out of those legs of Kipchoge.
Well, Kipchoge just having a word there with the only remaining pacemaker now. So we've lost 2 of the 3 pacemakers. Chip Corney. And that's another thing that Jos Herman said. It would be decided on the day which of the three pacemakers stays in the race for the longest, depending on how they're feeling. So actually it's Chip Corney who has remained the longest. And of course, Tim, we may have a race on our hands as well. Let's not forget, this is not yet just Kipchoge against the clock. He's got somebody else there for company. And Kindi, well, if he can hang around, Kipchoge, dare I say it, may not even win the race. We're a long way from that, but there is some racing still to be had.
Well, there is, and isn't it great that we are talking about breaking the world record? For a while we were talking about sub 2 hours, and yet we're talking about a race as well. And a race from a mystery man is what is being presented to Eliud Kipchoge. Chep Kwoni, I wonder, when he drops out, if we'll see Kipchoge throw the gauntlet down, or Kinde take some aggressive action, or if it'll become a cat and mouse game. They've got a big cushion, remember, back to the chasing pack. So at 25k, you've got Kinde and Kipchoge, and then Kipruto, well, 1 minute 12 seconds back, so about 400 metres back still, Chris. I think that gap is staying the same, and actually, as we talk about the chasing pack, will they start closing the gap if these fellas don't push it on?
Well, there was no sense of panic, was there, from Amos Kipruto? Every time we've dipped into him, he's remained utterly focused and metronomic behind, albeit over a minute behind. And will that gap, as you say, start to close? Still up on his toes, though. Kipchoge looking very, very determined and focused. He's had the same build-up, the same routine. He decamps and leaves his home and leaves Grace, his wife, and his 3 children, and chips in with all the chores, the washing and cleaning and the cooking. It's very much a democratic, socialist sort of team effort up at the training camp, and then he will go back down and spend maybe weekends with his wife and children. That's the routine, that's the template that served him so well. So 27 kilometres, the highest point in the course, and then there were 3. A Kenyan, an Ethiopian, and a Kenyan pacemaker, Chep Kwoni.
Well, the women are coming up towards 25 kilometres, and I can tell you that 24 kilometres, the women are still on schedule for a world record by well over a minute. At 24k, the projected time was 2:12:44. Remember, the world record 2:14:04 by Bridget Kosgei 4 years back. So a minute and 20 up on world record schedule at 24k, and the 25k split has just come through. A 3:11 for that 25th k in the women's race. That's well, about steady. They're averaging about 3:10 per kilometre in the women's race, and 2:14 tempo is 3:10.5. So they are still very much on world record schedule.
There you can see the gap is starting to widen again. So now 9 seconds inside world record pace. That would bring him in at exactly 2 hours and 1 minute. Still a long way to go, though, and the next 20 minutes could be crucial here as we approach 1:20 on the clock. So 40 minutes, 40 to 41 more minutes of this race at this tempo still to unfold, and still Eliud Kipchoge has company.
Wonderful study of the facial expression of the greatest marathon runner in history. By some margin, the greatest marathon runner in history on the men's side, Eliud Kipchoge. Still bouncing along wonderfully well. And interesting, the contrast between him and Kindi, although Kindi is very well hidden by Chep Kwoni at the moment. Kindi doesn't have anything like the same style. He's got a far more flat, fluid, flowing, distance runner's gait than Kipchoge, who has that lovely, powerful bounce.
And you're right, Timmy. You'd have thought ordinarily that bounce would cost him energy, and that he would lose something through the return from the road. But no, it's hugely effective. Slightly wider arm coverage and lower arms for Kindi as they take on more fluid. That was a 3 minute kilometre going through 28. That is the slowest of the race so far.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the splits coming through. 2:55 for the 26th, 2:56 for the 27th, and 2:59 or 3 minutes for the 28th kilometre. And the projected finishing time now is 2:01:30, so some way outside the world record. And Kindy, of course, well, depending on how he's feeling, he'll be delighted with the way this is going. What he doesn't want is Kipchoge now to accelerate. I wonder how much longer Chepkwony will keep going. He's doing a fabulous job. Of course, these pacemakers are professionals. They're fabulous runners themselves. They're paid money for this job. Very often they're given bonuses for getting to further points beyond halfway, 25k, 30k. I know at the London Marathon when I was working with Dave Bedford at the London Marathon, we used to give bonus, I think a small bonus for every further kilometre beyond 25k, just to if they could help get the elite athletes further and further into the race at a super tempo, at a planned tempo. And I hope Chepkwony's on the same sort of deal, frankly, Chris, because he's doing a fabulous job here. I mean, approaching 29k and still pumping it out for these two.
Yeah, and actually I think he was not meant to be the lead pacemaker of the three. Can he get through to 30 kilometres? And at 30 kilometres, as seasoned marathon watchers know, often the racing starts. That's when the handbrake often comes off. And we are about 1.5 kilometres away from that. But Kindy's still there. And at what point does he start to think, do you know what? I can win this race.
Well, we can go back to the women now, and I can tell you that while things are slipping, there's a bit of slippage in the men's race in the tempo terms. While we've got a fabulous race unfolding, that world record, and forget about 2 hours now, but the world record is looking unlikely. In the women's race, it's looking more and more likely. They've gone through 25k in 1:18:40, and that is the fat end of a minute quicker than Bridget Kosgei when she set the world record in Chicago back in 2019. So Tigist Assefa here at the moment is delivering. Now I've got to say that guardedly because she's got another 50 minutes or so of running to come, but she's on schedule through 26k for 2:12:43 is Bridget Kosgei. Long way to go yet, several acts to unfold, but as you can see, look at that, 49 seconds inside world record tempo. That world record tempo, that middle line of numbers, by the way, is steady tempo. And for world record, basically 2:14, give or take. You need 3:10 per kilometre. Well, she's just keeps knocking them out at 3:08, 3:13, 3:08, 3:10, 3:06 was her 26th kilometre. She's on her own now. She has pacemakers around her. And the scenario could not have worked out better for her, Chris, because I actually think that now sort of blue sky thinking, to coin a terrible cliche, is what she's got now. She just needs to focus upon these pacemakers and the clock and not worry about racing, which in a way is a psychological complication.
Yes, and just as we say that, the sun comes out quite fittingly for the first time here in Berlin. Constant checking of the watch, but she's looking good. And this is the story, as we speak, folks, this is the story of the Berlin Marathon unfolding. With all due respect to Eliud Kipchoge, things seem to be just starting to slip away. He still has got time to make that up, but at the moment he's slipped outside world record tempo. This young woman is well inside world record pace, and again, the information she's got on the back of the lead car there is absolutely vital. Isn't it, Tim? She's got her watch. She's constantly referring to the watch.
Yeah, you can see the lead car top left of picture, 2:12:44. That's telling her the schedule she's moving at. So she will know full well that's 1 hour 20 seconds, 1 minute 20 seconds inside world record schedule. There's Chepkirui, Sheila Chepkirui Kiprotich, the wonderful Kenyan 32-year-old who set a personal best when she was third in Valencia on the 4th of December last year. She was fourth in London this year in 2:18. She's got great track PBs too. She's a 14:54 5,000 runner, 30:45 for 10,000. She is the real deal. She's very consistent, has run very fast half marathons as well. Said she wants around 68 minutes for halfway. And Sheila Chepkirui, well, she will have gone well inside that, just trying to establish what she did do through halfway. Looking at, just going into our system, Chepkirui went through halfway in 66.51, so she was well over a minute and more up on what she wanted for halfway. She's in uncharted territory.
Around 260 metres is her lead at the moment.
That's not enormous, is it?
No.
That's not enormous. That's, 50 seconds, something like that? Maybe pushing a minute for the lead women?
Closer to 300 metres, actually. But that information on the lead car is a new addition in the last few years, and it's priceless, isn't it, for the runners who, yes, they've got their watches, but they can just keep their eyes focused ahead, and that's obviously in real time as well.
She's moving wonderfully well, though, Chris. I mean, her last couple of kilometres have been 3:06 and 3:09 as safer here. She's only running her third marathon. She's relatively inexperienced. I mean, you look at somebody like Worknesh Odessa, who was with her for the first 20k or so. She's running her 13th marathon. Hiwot Gebrekedan, a 2:19 performer who's back there behind her, is running her 12th marathon. But Tigista Safer here, well, maybe it's that naivety, that lack of knowledge about the marathon distance that is to her advantage. She hasn't had any bad experiences. Yes, her 2:34, she said she was ill for her debut in Riyadh last year. That was in March last year. And then, of course, that fabulous win here 12 months back. And she's thinking, I'm sure, about the memory of that very positive day here a year ago, Chris. And she's just getting everything right at the moment. I mean, it is astonishing. And when you think that she's a former track runner, almost a sprinter, 54 for 400, 159 for 800, this is unbelievable.
Well, I asked you the question a few minutes ago. If you're Bridget Kosgei, what are you thinking? If you're Keely Hodgkinson or Athing Mo, what are you thinking?
If you said Keely Hodgkinson, you've got to run a 10k, I think she'd have kittens. Never mind about half marathon or a marathon. Oh, bless her. Keely Hodgkinson is very much a 400, 800 metre runner at the moment, the World Championship silver medalist. Athing Mo, who won the Diamond League final, of course, just last Sunday. She's a sub-50 second 400 metre runner. Those are pure track athletes. And yet the weird thing is about Assefa is she never went through the gears. She never went through 1,500, 3,000, 5,000 in
straight
her
to the
career.
marathon. Yeah, unbelievable. Approaching 28 kilometres, this is the Wild Boar, the Wilde Eber roundabout, and she'll pick up the noise of the bands. There's a great samba band that often parks itself here at the Wilde Eber roundabout. Brilliant atmosphere, and that again will just put an extra little spring in your step, and she'll, I'm sure, respond to that. Being protected by the pacemaker, there's no wind to speak of, but this is the story here of this marathon so far. Eliud Kipchoge and Kindi are well ahead, but slipping away from the world record. But the world record in the women's race is well and truly on.
Well, Chris, the men have gone through 30k in 1:26.24. That is some 45 seconds outside the splits of last year. So they are, I think, just involved in a fiercely intense race in that men's contest rather than a chase for records of any kind now, with 3/4 of the distance done. Look at the crowds here, fabulous crowds, and running through a tunnel of people like that is, well, it's at once a blessing and at the same time it can be hard work. Many years ago, obviously the last century, I ran the odd race where there were big crowds in Madrid, 10k races in Madrid and so on, where you're running through a noisy tunnel of people, and it's deafening. You can hardly think straight sometimes.
Well, these two men are thinking really clearly at the moment, approaching an hour and a half of running, so we've got just over 30 minutes left of this event, and we've got a race on our hands here. And all the while, let's pay tribute once again to Chepkirui, who is still there pacing, gone 30 kilometres, and I hope, Tim, you're right, that he's in for a little extra bonus there for keeping going. Now then, is this Kipchoge on his bike and making his move? There is, for the first time, some clear daylight.
Yeah, separation at last, and this is a very tough moment for Kindi, because he's obviously been redlining for the last few kilometres. We didn't know, and his facial expression gives nothing away, but he's been right on the limit, and he's had to let go now. and he's got to manage himself through these next 10 kilometres. It's going to be very, very tough. In fact, 11 kilometres he's got to go. How is he going to manage himself? Having hit the red line and gone through it, in effect, he's now going to be back on his heels, and it'll be very, very tough for him to maintain a solid tempo, stay in second, and keep ahead of that chasing pack.
And that chasing pack will keep an eye on them, because they then will start to close if he's not careful. At the moment, he's guaranteed second place as things stand, but that gap will get wider and wider ahead of him, but it could get narrower and narrower behind him, approaching 32 kilometres. And there is the trademark smile of Eliud Kipchoge. I think he was stung, and I think he was hurt by some of the criticism after Boston. He had a bad day at the office. He doesn't have many. Just to remind you, he's won 15 of his 18 marathons. That is extraordinary. It's a success rate of 83%, which is, well, without parallel. Nobody else has got that sort of number at all. And were he to go and win today, it would be his 5th success in Berlin, moving ahead of Haile Gebrselassie. And there, just slipping away, 25 seconds outside world record at even pace. Those numbers from last year.
Now, do athletes the calibre of Eliud Kipchoge go through bad patches and then find their legs again and rally? If so, then he's got about half an hour, about 10k of running in which to regain composure, up his tempo, and head back down towards this 201.
And this is the moment, the trademark little look over the shoulder, first from Kipchoge, then Chip Kwon-Yi, and he was away. There you go, mate. It's all yours.
Interesting, isn't it, Chris, that around the time Kipchoge broke away and created separation between himself and Kindi, there's the pacemaker, Chep Kwon-Yi. What a fabulous job he has done. Massive pat in the back from him.
Look at the cadence, though. Oh, and Kindi has paid. There it is, Kindi, and we're not surprised. He was redlining for most of the race, and his race is over.
But Chris, he's been on 201 tempo for an hour and a half. Surely he had a 204, 205 in him, and he's just not managed those resources sufficiently.
A little wonderful gesture there, a little fist pump from Kipchoge to the pacemaker to say, well done, mate, you've done a great job. But the news there is Kindi has also dropped out. So the pacemaker and Kindi, the only challenger to Kipchoge, both have finished their races. One has done a brilliant job, the other has surpassed all expectations. And now look at the cadence. It's almost as if a weight has been lifted, Tim, isn't it? Look at the body language. The smile's back on the face, he's lifted his legs, the arms are working harder. And now in the Berlin sunshine, Eliud Kipchoge is now going to set about. I mean, surely he can't wrestle back this world record from here.
I doubt it very much, although maybe there will be a freedom, Chris, psychologically now for Kipchoge on his own. Glorious isolation out in front, and this is where maybe we will see Eliud take his gloves off, so to speak. There's Kindi. He has run a fantastic 3/4 of a race, but unfortunately for him it's 42k, not 32k, and he is gone. Sad sight, but he will be back, and he'll be back with a bang, I'm sure, will Kindi. He's relatively inexperienced in the marathon distance, and he will have learnt so much from today. It'll take him a while to recover from it, but he will bank that experience, and he'll learn so much from Berlin 2023. Kipchoge here, Chris, I do think that he has an opportunity now to just stride on in his inimitable, isolated style and claw back a few seconds. At 31k, he was on 201.38 pace, so he's from somewhere. He's got to find 30 seconds over this next 10k to get back to world record.
It's a big ask, isn't it? Not impossible, but it is a big ask.
It's 3 seconds per kilometre. It's doable.
It's doable. It's doable. But
he says sitting in his chair with a glass of water.
As long as it's only water. Yeah, there's been a definite marked in tempo and cadence here from Eliud Kipchoge. Well, normal service resumed. Marcel Hug a few minutes ago coming over the line to take the wheelchair title. Victory number 8 for the great man. The silver bullet. Winner yet again Marcel Hug. A brilliant performance. And, well, a sprint finish in the end in the women's race. Catherine de Bruyne winning for the second year running. She won on debut here last year in a course record, and she's beaten the course record again. What a brilliant performance. And Manuela Scher coming through in third place.
Eliud Kipchoge striding out, and around the time that Kindi dropped out, Kipchoge strode onwards, so the sun came out, and he is producing the usual in Berlin is Eliud Kipchoge. Boeing disaster, Chris, heading for his 5th victory on the streets of Berlin.
It does look as though some tension has been released. He wasn't looking tense before, but I think now that he's out on his own, he's got the streets of Berlin all for himself. It's clear daylight ahead, clear water, if you like. And there's an extra little spring back in the step there. I'm not suggesting for a moment that he was worried about Kindi. He must have thought in his heart of hearts, this guy can't keep this tempo up for the entire race, and so it proved. But there's a determination now on the face of Eliud Kipchoge, who's striding out towards what would be victory number 16 in 19 races. Quite extraordinary.
Well, Tigist Assefa has gone through 30k in 1:34.12, a 3:05, that 30th kilometre. She's accelerating. Her last couple of 4 kilometres, listen to this, she's gone 3:09, 3:09, 3:03, 3:05. She's finding extra legs as Eliud Kipchoge, just a little way up the road ahead, is struggling to get back down towards world record splits. She is pummeling the world record splits of Bridget Kosgei from 4 years ago. 3:05, 3:06, her last 2 kilometres. In fact, she's gone through 31k now, and the projected time, wait for it folks, 2:12.27. Now that is a time that until not too many years ago was a great international class time for a male runner. 2:12.27 is what is being projected here. Another massive barrier. Barring disasters, Chris, in about half an hour, is about 40 minutes, is coming the way of Tigist Assefa.
Yet more history. We asked the question at the start of the programme, would we see a little bit of history again on the streets of Berlin? And so far, the answer, thanks to this young woman, is yes, we should. Still plenty of time to go, but again, a little smile on the face, which is always a good sign. Looking really nice. Eliud Kipchoge approaching 32 kilometres. Way out in front here. Kindi, just to remind you, who was his only company for the first 31 kilometres and a bit of the race, has gone. And now Amos Kipruto and the chasing pack are behind, but they are well behind. Approaching 35k, 1:40.07, I can tell you, was the split last year for 35 kilometres.
That chasing pack that Kipruto is with is 6 strong, mind you. So
they can work together.
Kindi is not now something that they could target. Kipchoge, 1:11.48 at 30k. Just double checking that. Yeah. 1:26.25 at 30k, excuse me. And the chasing pack, a minute and 17 seconds back at 30k.
Approaching 35 kilometres, Tim, and it feels to me like he may well have clawed back something of that deficit on the world record. We'll bring you the split as soon as we can. A reminder, bottom right, 1:40.07 was the split last year through 35 kilometres. He's got about another half a kilometre or just less, about 400 metres.
I don't think he is doing any clawing, Chris. His last couple of kilometres have both been 2:57s. World record tempo is 2-hour tempo is 2:50. 2:01 pace is 2:52, and he's operating some 5 or 6 seconds outside that per kilometre at the moment. So he's losing ground on his own world record at 34k. His projected winning time is 2:01.51. Remember, his world record from last year that you called so well is 2:01.09. So he's over 40 seconds outside his world record tempo at the moment, and he's got 8k in which to claw it back. It's becoming an insurmountable task.
Here is the Gedächtniskirche, the Kaiser Wilhelm Memorial Church, built in 1895, much destroyed during the Second World War, but what has remained has become and remains an important monument in Berlin.
The crowd's loving this. Familiar scenes, a sense of deja vu to some degree, Chris, as he heads along in that white vest with his sponsors on the top, and the red shorts the same as last year, the bouncing stride of Kipchoge, 35k, 1:41.10.
Yeah, so just over a minute outside the world record of last year. In fact, 63 seconds outside, so he is slipping away. It was 45 seconds 5 kilometres ago. That's just grown now by about 18 seconds. So you're absolutely right, Tim. There's no clawing back. Indeed, he's slipping away further, which then turns our attention to the chasing pack. How far behind are they? And have they got any chance at all of reeling this man in and denying him a 5th victory here in Berlin?
It would be extraordinary if they could.
So let's just look back on the men's race so far. These are the main stories in the men's and women's race. And Safer, Tim, is the story of the women's race so far.
Well, it is, Chris, because she's got about half an hour of running to do, and she's on world record schedule. She went through halfway in 66.21, way inside world record schedule. The pacemakers done an incredible job in the men's race today. Kipchoge, the main beneficiary.
Yeah, at 31 kilometres, he lost the only other athlete who was in company. And are the chasing pack starting to gain ground, allowing for the foreshortening? This would be a real shock. Let's keep an eye on the gap between Kipchoge and the rest of the field. He's still got around 18 or 19 minutes.
47 seconds the gap is down to now at 35k, 1:41.10 for Kipchoge. And Kipruto chasing 1:41.57.
So 47 seconds the gap. Kipchoge looks to have slowed here. Remember, only once before has he not won in Berlin. That was on debut in 2013, beaten into second place by Wilson Kipsang. It's not a position he has experienced on his other visits here in Berlin. And Tim, tell me, how much information will he be getting from the bikes and the people about that gap and what it's doing behind him?
I wonder, because his management agency, Jos Hermans, and his entourage are here, but is anybody able to be yelling information at him at the moment? I'm not sure. I don't see anybody that he's familiar with on bikes alongside him, so he'll be doing his own computations. Whether he will be aware that that gap is gradually closing from the chasing pack, I don't know, but here you can see Tigist Assefa still looks very calm, doesn't she? Her demeanour, her facial expression, giving nothing away. And Assefa here has gone through 33k at the moment with a 3:04. She is accelerating. I mean, her times these last 5 kilometres, 3:03, 3:05, 3:06, 3:05, 3:04. Metronomic running, albeit with a slight acceleration from the previous 5k. Her projected time at 33k with 9k to go, 2:12.17. I mean, if she keeps this up, Chris, we could see, and this just sounds like science fiction, we could see a 2:11 something winning time for Tigist Assefa here. It is just astonishingly strong running. There it is, 1 minute 22 seconds inside the steady tempo for world record. 1:44.50 it should be at 33k. She's on 1:43.28. It's a massive margin from that virtual figure of Bridget Kosgei, who's way down the road behind her.
Excuse me, just talking across pictures, but in the men's race, in that chasing pack, we have 2 debutants at the marathon distance. Tadessa Tekele from Ethiopia and Vincent Kemoi from Kenya, both making their debuts and both in that chasing pack. So that would be quite a story, along with Amos Kipruto. Remember, the gap was 47 seconds at 35 kilometres. We'll keep an eye and see if that's closing, and if so, by how much.
Well, Gebru here, doing a great job. I don't know if there's any communication going on between them, if she's been speaking to him at all, maybe at moments when we haven't had a camera on them. We saw her passing drinks to him about 45 minutes ago. There was plenty of coordination between the pair, and she's tucked in, slipstreaming him here, getting a very, very slight advantage from that slipstreaming effect. It may seem insignificant. She's so close to him, I'm almost worried she might clip his heels, look. But there is a very, very slight, we're talking about these tiny, tiny marginal gains. There's a slight marginal gain from being tucked in behind somebody and running along their slipstream. So her 33rd kilometre was at 3:04. Before that, a 3:05 and a 3:06 and a 3:05. And that information on that lead vehicle that she needs to see isn't there right now, but she will be fully aware that she's heading here at the moment for a world record. Gebru rocking from side to side. He's having a little grimace to himself. It's hard work. It's understandable. He's running 2:12 pace.
Yeah. It's meant to hurt. And this a significant part of the course. This is the Kurfürstendamm, the Kudamm, one of the most famous streets in Berlin, where the finish line was. Actually, she's approaching 34 kilometres. And between 1981 and 2000, this is where the Berlin Marathon actually finished before it was moved and then moved again. Huge crowds. They'll go past KaDeWe, the famous department store as well. And then over the Spree for the second time. But a safer, irresistible.
So she has put the opposition to bed long ago now. She's been in fabulous form. Last year, 3 half marathons she won. She won here in Berlin. Her personal best for a half marathon, by the way, is not spectacular. You know, there are plenty of athletes around now who are running 64, 65 minutes. She's run 67 minutes. That was in Germany back in April last year. She's very much focused upon this event now.
Well, the chasing group, look at that, are now, what, just about 200 metres behind. This is getting interesting. This is getting very, very interesting and a little bit worrying for Eliud Kipchoge, who's still looking good. The bounce is still there. But is the tempo, is the rate at which he's running slower than that of the chasing pack? My impression is, Tim, that they are gaining, and we'll be able to bring you confirmation of that at 40k, but my sense is that that gap is closing.
Well, that's 6 or 7 minutes away yet. It would be great to be able to see the gap back to that chasing group, but his last couple of kilometres are 2:59 and 2:57, and the gap is 43, 44 seconds. There you can see it's varying, it's hovering around 43 seconds, so it has closed a little bit. Over the last few minutes, it's gone from, well, now we're seeing it's 47, 52. It's hard to tell, that's quite some variation.
Well,
but if it's around 45 seconds, I think he'll be safe because they're not closing it quickly enough. They're going to run out of road.
They're going to run out of road. And just to remind you, it was 47 seconds at 35 kilometres. It is closing, but not enough. Here is Kipruto. We haven't seen much of him throughout the race. And the two debutants there, I mentioned, in the red, Kipkemoy, Vincent Kipkemoy on debut. He's got a 59.09 half marathon personal best. And on the right of picture there, Tadesse Tekele, the 21-year-old, a 59.41 half marathon personal best. That was in Herzogenaurach in Germany last April. What a debut, though, for these two. I mean, this is a story within the story, Tim, isn't it? Two marathon debutants here, and at the moment, Kipkemoy in the red just disappeared off picture. There he is lying in second place. This is the chasing group, around 44, 45 seconds behind Eliud Kipchoge.
Yeah, good to see this chasing group and the athletes therein wearing 3. Is it 3?
Yeah, Kipruto.
It is Kipruto.
So he's losing ground. So they're the two debutantes here, running their first ever marathon and in second and third place at the moment in this race.
Tough this for Kipruto, Chris. He's very experienced at 30. Yeah, he has run a 2:03. That was in Tokyo in March last year when he finished second to Eliud Kipchoge. He's in his 15th marathon, so he's got plenty of experience, and he will know probably that the writing is on the wall as he struggles to see those two go away from him.
So, a little over 10 minutes of running left for Eliud Kipchoge, with a chasing group who are slightly gaining on him, but we feel that they're going to run out of road. They've only got around 4 kilometres left, and Eliud Kipchoge, there he is, in splendid solitary isolation into the latter stages of this race down the Kudamm. He's going to do those dog legs and come out eventually on Unter den Linden. There he is, going past, I think he's going past our hotel, Tim, as we speak there on the Leipziger Straße.
Oh look, Chris, there's somebody going through your room, helping themselves to your laptop. Yeah, a little bit of cloud cover today, a little bit of mist over the city when they started nearly 2 hours ago now, and that was probably playing to the benefit of the athletes because it's kept it cool. A little bit chilly if you're walking around in shirt sleeves or a t-shirt, but ideal for marathon running as you continue to sweat and benefit from that sweating. When it gets hot and humid and temperature climbs, then it's much tougher conditions. There is Eliud Kipchoge, massive bicycles trying to keep up with this fella around the streets of the German capital. And that chasing group, that chasing pair, Chris, have got him in their sights now. And it's significant when you turn a corner and you can see somebody up the road ahead of you. It gives you that incentive. It's like a carrot being dangled in front of you.
It is. We shouldn't get carried away by the foreshortening, of course, of those pictures. It makes it look as though they're just behind him. But they are still significantly behind. But the question is, are they gaining? And if so, by how much? And have they got enough road left? Kipchoge's got a little over 3 kilometres to go. There we are. Kipchoge left of picture, and the chasing group, goodness me. Now, at what point, Tim, does Kipchoge look over his shoulder, if at all? Knowing him, he won't. He won't give them the satisfaction of knowing that they're there.
Well, Chris, his 38th kilometre at 3:03. The world record holder, the defending champion, is tiring. That's his slowest kilometre of the race. 3:03 for kilometre 38 from Eliud Kipchoge, and they are chasing. They've got a target. He's got a target on his back, in effect. Or at least he would have for them if they could see beyond this car that's right behind him, which is a little bit weird.
So Kipkemboy in the red is leading the charge. A group of 3, Kipkemboy and Tekeli, new names in marathon running, alongside Amos Kipruto, who's finished second behind Eliud Kipchoge on several occasions. But there is Kipkemboy wearing 69 in his first ever World Marathon Majors, first ever marathon of any sort. And at the moment, and look at that, what an incentive that is. And they are gaining. No doubt about it. Has Eliud got enough road?
Well, he's got to remain calm here. He's 11 seconds up on them at the moment, up on the world record schedule, 11 seconds over world record schedule, I should say. So he's still moving at a remarkable pace, but that last kilometre a little bit worrying. 3:03, the world record. He was this stage. He was knocking out 250s, 252s. And they are closing all the time. There is a race on here. This is a fascinating final act yet to unfold here, Chris.
Well, we've been talking about numbers through most of the last couple of hours, and once again, I hope you've not found that too much of an overkill. But with all due respect, I think the numbers now go out of the window. This is all about racing, and this is all about this man, for example, Vincent Kipkemboy, was speaking to one of his team the other day and said he's really looking forward to seeing what he can do here. Just to remind you, never run a marathon before, 59:09, his best effort. That was last year over the half marathon. Based in Kenya, so we could be heading for a Kenyan 1-2. We've also got the Ethiopian Tadessa Tekeli in there as well, also on debut. Approaching 40 kilometres. And that gap is getting narrower and narrower. Remember, at 35k, the gap in terms of time was 47 seconds. It feels as though that has got a lot closer. How much is Kipchoge tiring? just over 2 kilometres to go for what would be a 5th Berlin victory. And Tim, it's barely credible, but I ask you the question, can Eliud Kipchoge hang on?
Well, it's a very good question, because can you imagine, as they go through the Brandenburg Gate, them being side by side? The smile is there. Is it a grimace? Is it the Kipchoge version of a grimace? His 38th kilometre at 3:03, his 39th kilometre at 3:01, Chris. And just looking as he's approaching 40k, there he goes through 2:55. He has rallied. Maybe he got a little glance at those behind him. Kipchoge 1:56.06 at 40k.
He's picked it up. And you know, last year he did back-to-back 2:52s in the last 2 kilometres, and he looks as though he's rallied here. Maybe the message got through and he's just picked it up. He's not about to relinquish his Berlin crown that easily, and there's a definite injection of pace. And has he got enough of a buffer there to get him home over the line? 31 seconds at 40k, so they've made up 16 seconds over 5 kilometres. The gap is still a reasonably healthy 31 seconds. Can they make that up in 2.2 kilometres?
I think they're going to run out of road now. That's still over half a minute, Chris. He's, as you said, his previous couple of kilometres have been a 3:03, a 3:01. That 40th kilometre for the world record holder, 2:56. The competitive instincts coming to the surface now as he realises he's in danger, and he's having to dig very, very deep here. There's still loads of bounce in that gorgeous stride of his. World record 2:01.29, and look at those winning times, Chris. I mean, they just get quicker and quicker.
Well, that's his record here in Berlin, the 4 victories. He's heading for number 5. Haile Gebrselassie has also won on 4 occasions, so if he can hang on here, he would be out on his own in terms of Berlin wins. It would be 5 out of 6. There's the chaser, Kipkemboi in the red. There he is on debut, having the race of his life. And what an incentive that is. Has he got enough time? There is that Gendarmenmarkt, one of the loveliest squares in the whole of Berlin. They'll do a series of dog legs, turning left, then right, then left, then right, and eventually they'll come out onto Unter den Linden. And there, Kipchoge will see the Brandenburg Gate and a familiar sight. And he knows almost every inch of this tarmac. He's run it on so many occasions, and all bar one, he's won it. Into the last kilometre or so. Still looking full of bounce. This has been a very different race for Eliud Kipchoge to any other one he's done here in Berlin. The clock ticking round to approaching the 2-hour mark. The world record is not going to be beaten today. The sub-2 that we thought might be on in the early parts of the race has gone as well, well gone. And he's picked it up, hasn't he here, Tim? I think he's picked up the knees. The cadence is increasing.
We are going to see a world record, however, in that women's contest. There's little doubt of that now. I can tell you, Tigist Assefa is still pumping out 3:07 per kilometre. If she was going to run 2:14 exactly, she'd be running 3:10 per kilometre. But she's way inside that. She's going to threaten the 2:12 barrier. I mean, her last kilometre, a 3:02 now, at 38k for Tigist Assefa. Her projected finishing time has come down to 2:12.07. Can you believe? It is, she's pushing now a 2-minute improvement on the world record.
Well, the current world recorder in the men's race has got one more significant turn to come. That's his view. He will turn left onto Unter den Linden in the sunshine. And it feels from here as though he's done enough. We look out for the red vest of Kipkemboi behind him, the debutant, but Eliud Kipchoge turning left then, and the familiar sight of Unter den Linden, the tree-lined avenue, so significant over the years. The Hotel Adlon will come into view on his left, and from here we can't see it, but Eliud Kipchoge can. There he can now. There is the Brandenburg Gate, and from there he knows it's less than a lap of the track in track terms. Surely now he can't be beaten. The clock ticks round to 2 hours and 30 seconds. The world record will have to wait for another day, but Eliud Kipchoge is now on his way to a 5th Berlin victory.
Chris, that glorious sight of Kipchoge with just a few hundred metres to go, the glorious sight for him for the first time of the Brandenburg Gate, that is almost like the finish line. It's like a forewarning of the finish. If he gets there in first place with a gap behind him, then he can enjoy those last 352 metres to the finish line. He can stride out, wave to the crowd and accept his 5th victory. That is surely what's coming his way. It has been yet again a marvellous performance from Kipchoge, who for so long threatened the world record, but now is just threatening to win for the 5th time, barring disaster. He's nearly home and dry.
Well, his current world record has just come and gone. 2:01.09 was last year. It's still going to be a pretty good time. He's still going to come in and around 2:02 and bits, but the sunshine is out as he goes through the arches of the famous Brandenburg Gate, opened in 1791, and from here it's 352 metres, less than a lap of the track. He's been here so many times before, the crowd going crazy, the sunshine is out, and the stage is set for Eliud Kipchoge, who for the first time looks over his shoulder. The victory is secure. They had been threatening to come back at him. At one point we were talking about sub 2 hours. At another point for much of the race we talked about a new world record. That's not to be, but Eliud Kipchoge now is on his way to victory number 5 here in Berlin. Another masterful performance on the streets of the German capital, and now he can enjoy his moment. The pressure is off. Kipkemboy in the red is behind him. What a race he's had. He will bring him home in a few minutes, but he's almost there. The finish line is there. The last few metres for Eliud Kipchoge. A different race here in Berlin for the first time, but it's victory number 5 for Eliud Kipchoge. 2:02.40 the winning time. The world record not bothered today, but he won't mind. He moves ahead of Haile Gebrselassie with a 5th victory in total in Berlin. That's 16 wins in 19 marathons. And what about the story here for our second placer? Brilliant performance, Vincent Kipkemboy, his first ever marathon. No wonder he's celebrating. What a moment for the youngster. Yes, that's all about marathon running. Well done to Kipkemboy. And Tadesse Tekele comes home in 3rd. The 2 debutants, 2nd and 3rd. Tekele from Ethiopia, the 21-year-old, comes home in 3rd place. So the master gets the victory, and the 2 apprentices, well, they've learnt their craft really well on this opening day. Brilliant performance by Eliud Kipchoge, and the Kenyan crowds, who are out here in number, are loving their moment. Victory number 5, a 5-star performance from Eliud Kipchoge.
And the Kenyans celebrate yet again in style, proudly waving their banners aloft. What a run from Kipchoge. Officially his time 2:02.42, by the way. Another supreme performance where he turned back the challengers of the pretenders. 1-2 for Kenya, with Tadesse Tekele of Ethiopia in his debut running 2:03.24 behind the debut run of Kipkemboy, 2:03.13 for 2nd. Oh dear.
Well, just to put it into context quickly, 2:02.42 is the 8th fastest time in history, so not too shabby.
Now, Tigist Assefa, back to her. We've been talking about the wonderful racing for the last half hour or so in the men's race. This is not racing, this is an exhibition performance from the Ethiopian. The reigning champion, the defending champion, the champion to be surely in just a few minutes' time. 2 hours, 4 minutes on the clock. Her projected winning time now has been gradually coming down towards 2:12. Her 39th kilometre was a 3:07, and that gave her a projected winning time of 2:12.07. And look at this, 1 minute 47 inside the world record. Bridget Kosgei's performance has been, threatened, but not broached since 4 years ago, 2019 in Chicago, when she lopped well over a minute off the long-standing, fabulous world record of Paula Radcliffe. Well, now the world record of Bridget Kosgei is about to be resigned to history, because this will be the world record holder, surely in just a very few minutes' time, about 7 minutes away. Tigist Assefa through 40k in 2:05.14, 2:05.13. There is the first German, yes.
Amanal Petros coming home in 2:04.59. So he said he was on 2:04 shape. It's a huge personal best. He's taken over a minute off his previous lifetime best on debut in Berlin, and surely has qualified for Paris next year in the Olympic Games. Well done to Amanal Petros, the German number one.
Through 40k then in 2:05.14. Bridget Kosgei went through 40k in 2:07.11. She's 1 minute 57 seconds ahead of Bridget Kosgei, and still looking strong. The shoulders, the arms maybe beginning to roll from side to side a little bit more. Jared Ward there. Well, he was 6th in the Rio Olympic Games, was Jared Ward, coached by my old mucker, my old friend Ed Eyestone, great marathon runner and 10,000 metre runner of years gone by. Jared Ward, the supremely cerebral marathon racer. Now in the latter years of his career, he would be the first to admit that. But here, chasing the leading woman, I wonder if pride will make him stick with her and ease past her once they're through the Brandenburg Gate. Gebru is of the three is the one who's had to do the hard running. Gebru, the pacemaker, really straining here to help her Assefa through these final few kilometres to the finish line. Chris, she is trusting, relying upon Gebru. They're linked together, they're by a band no more than about a metre long. She is stuck with him kilometre after kilometre, and he has been the most wonderful, wonderful lead for her.
Well, he's done all the heavy lifting, hasn't he? And he's made it relatively straightforward for her. But he looks as though he's really suffering now, and he's just gesturing, and maybe he's about to move and give her clear daylight. Approaching 41 kilometres, they've got just 2 more turns before they come into Unter den Linden, and as we saw with Eliud Kipchoge, once that final turn is negotiated and the Brandenburg Gate comes into view, then the heart can lift, and then you know you're home.
Well, the first time 2:20 was broken for the marathon was here in Berlin. Naoko Takahashi back in 2001 for Japan, winning with 2:19.46. Now, there are no less than 65 women who have broken 2 hours 20 for the marathon. Jared Ward there to left of picture, just striding out, feeling strong, maybe feeling he was almost hypnotised by sticking behind Assefa when he knew he could go a little bit quicker. But it matters not a jot, because Gebru, rightly there, saying to Assefa, come on, move to the fore, get the glory yourself. I think he's very aware here that maybe he's sort of hogging the camera shot, and it's not his fault. World record 2:14.04, you can see bottom right of picture there by Bridget Kosgei. That back in Chicago on the 13th of October 2019 was a historic improvement. The world record prior to that was Paula Radcliffe's 2:15.25 in London back in 2003. Well, it's about to take another massive jump, a bigger jump even than Kosgei managed 4 years ago, and we never thought we'd see that, Chris.
No, we didn't. I think the gesturing is to make sure that she sticks to the shortest line, the blue line, making sure she doesn't waver even by a few centimetres. There is again, pointing to the blue line. That's your line, and there's the prize, and there's the Brandenburg Gate.
The Brandenburg Gate then beckons for Tigist Assefa, the 2022 champion, who in winning 12 months ago in 2:15.37 became the 3rd fastest woman in history, is going to be the 2023 champion, but it's a very different story. She's running here towards a place in the history books. She's running towards a new world record, and she's going to better the world record of Bridget Kosgei from 4 years ago in Chicago by possibly more than 2 minutes. At 41k, her clocking for the kilometre was 3:03. Her projected time, 2:12.01. Now, if she can rally these last few hundred metres, could she break the 2:12 barrier? Unheard of improvement from this woman Tigist Assefa, 29 years old, in only her third ever marathon. There's Gebru, her pacemaker, who has done such a marvellous job. He's coached her through, coaxed her through, and now she approaches the Brandenburg Gate. It will be her retaining of the title here in Berlin, and he gestures her on with a wave there, almost a push through the Brandenburg Gate and into the glorious Berlin sunshine for Tigist Assefa. Look at the clock, 2:11 on the clock. She's got 300 meters to go. Can she get under 2:12? I think she can. She's going to better the world record, possibly here, by over 2 minutes. She's striding away now. This is the young girl who many years ago, back in 2014, ran 54 seconds for 400, a world-class 1:59 for 800 meters. And today, she becomes world record holder in the marathon, surely. A couple 100 meters to run. Tigist Assefa takes the world record to Ethiopia, snatches it from the grasp of Bridget Kosgei of Kenya from 4 years ago in Chicago. A few meters to go, still no smile, still that focus, and the world record is hers. And look at the clock, 2 hours 11:52. Unofficially, history is made. It is writ large in spectacular manner here in Berlin. 2:11:52. Let that sink in. I love it. Stops her own watch, maybe some 30 seconds or so too late. But her coach there, Gebru Keremimedu, giving her a huge hug. She took 2.5 minutes off the course record last year. Well, she's just locked more than 3.5 minutes off her own course record from a year ago. And we are in science fictional territory here. Gebru gives her a huge hug. What a job he's done as her pacemaker throughout, all the way through to about 42 kilometers. He left the glory stretch to her. But Chris, that is the marathon performance of the year, the marathon performance in many respects for many years from Tigist Assefa. A delightful story from a young woman last year who shocked us all with that personal best by 18 minutes. Who thought she'd improve her personal best by over 3 minutes in a huge new world record today?
Well, that is life-changing, isn't it? What a privilege to have witnessed that here in Berlin. And I'm looking at the numbers again. 2:11:52. I mean, there are some 800 metre runners who will be pleased with that as the numbers for an 800 metres race on the track, 2:11. But it's 2 hours, 11 minutes, 52 seconds. No wonder the coach is delighted. Little bit of history. And just a word about Paula Radcliffe. We haven't mentioned it already in commentary, but she's out on the course today, pacing a group at around 3:30 pace. And when you think about, Tim, the 2:15:25 that stood for over a decade, this has just sent that world record into the stratosphere. Bridget Kosgei, 2:14:04, and now 2:11:53 is the official time. 2:11:53, a new women's marathon record.
Just staggering. No wonder she's giving those shoes a kiss. They have carried her well all the way through to the performance of all time in the women's marathon. Conditions perfect this morning in Berlin, but so many other things have to come together. Get your ducks in a row, as they say. So many things have to be aligned right. The training has to go well, day in, day out, week in, week out, for many months prior to a performance like this. Travel has to be right, the sleep has to be right beforehand, the food, the diet has to be right. Everything has to click, and it has today in spectacular fashion. That is huge credit to her and her support team. And here, the second place, by the looks of things, Sheila Ketchep-Karui, when we can get her in focus, 32 years old, and she, coming towards the Brandenburg Gate, may threaten her personal best. She's about 2 minutes inside it at the moment, 2:17.29 for third in Valencia last December. She was fourth in London in 2:18.51. She is tired though, look at the difference. The stride, the gait of Assefa at this stage a few minutes ago was powerful. It was adrenaline fueled. It was an acceleration, whereas Sheila Chepkirui here, half smile, half grimace for her as she closes in on what looks to be a pretty comfortable second place.
Yeah, had a baby daughter back in 2018, ran that personal best in Valencia on debut. 2:17.29. Dropped out of the sport in 2008, didn't return to elite athletics until 2015, so she had a number of years away from the sport. Then of course there was the interruption from COVID, but here she is, Tim, with just over 350 metres to go.
Well, last year she mixed her track and road racing, including a win in the Berlin Half Marathon. That was in a 65:02. She became the 7th fastest ever in the half marathon, with third at the Ras Al Khaimah Half Marathon. She took a bronze medal in the Commonwealth Games 10,000 metres, behind Eilish McColgan's marvellous victory in the Vest of Scotland. And she has great track personal bests, and her last 4 half marathons, listen to this, 64, 67, 64, 65. Fabulously consistent at the half marathon. At the age of 32, can she improve? Well, she's not going to improve her best today, 2:17.29, almost up on the clock, bottom right of your screen. But it has nonetheless been a marvellous run from Sheila Chepkirui. Couldn't match Assefa for very long, and hardly surprising now when you see Assefa's winning time to 11:53 to give it the exact right mark, as Chris said. And she is hurting. She looks mortal, and that is almost reassuring for some of us who have been there in years gone by. She is working so hard for this time, and it's not far outside her lifetime best. A brilliant second there for Sheila Chepkirui in Berlin. And that official second place time for Sheila Chepkirui was just inside 2:18. It was about half a minute outside her lifetime best. Waiting for that to come through.
6 minutes the difference between Tigist Assefa in first and second place Chepkirui.
And Chepkirui taking second, and Shauri coming through for third place. And this is again has been a lonely run for her through the latter stages. Stressed, no time for smiling from her. Shauri, Magdalena Shauri of Tanzania from the Arusha club takes third place in Berlin 2023, making her debut, and she runs 2:18.48, something like that. She's a 66-minute half marathon runner, but 2:18.50, something like that.
2:17.49.
By the way, 2:17.49. 5 minutes 56 behind that astonishing run of Assefa. Let me just say it again for you in case it hasn't quite sunk in. 2:11.53, the winning time in the Berlin Marathon for the first woman home. A new world record by 2 minutes and 11 seconds.
There is Odessa, who was in contention, wasn't she, for the first half of the race.
Here it is again, the winning form of Tigist Assefa, crossing the line in 2 hours, 11 minutes, 53 seconds, lopping 2 minutes and 11 seconds off what itself was a fabulous world record by Bridget Kosgei back in 2019. In 4 years, it now leaps forward over 2 minutes. And dare I say it, in 4 years' time, we'll be looking at a woman running under 2:10. It is unthinkable until this last 4 or 5 years that women could get down to these sorts of times. But Tigist Assefa is the BMW Berlin Marathon champion of 2023 in a stunning world record. And of course it means this race, this course, this city now has both world records for men and women.
Yeah, the 13th world record to be set on this course, and Berlin continues to maintain its reputation as the fastest marathon on the planet, bar none. Proof again today. Mark Milder, we saw him earlier, among the first to congratulate Tigist Assefa, will be delighted as race director. What is it about Berlin? What is it about this place at this time of the year? All the ingredients have to be there in the right mix. But the most important of them is a world-class athlete in tip-top shape. And in Tigist Assefa, we certainly had that today. We had the usual pancake flat course, the weather, the temperature, perfect. No wind, a cool start, and then the sunshine comes out in the latter stages just to enhance the photographs. And Tim, we should say, €50,000 bonus for the world record.
Yeah, quite a handy morning's work, but of course it represents many months of hard endeavour. Well, she followed the blue line around the city, marked by 3 little stripes every few metres. She had 3 stripes on her shoes just to match that, and it was a 3-stripe performance. In fact, more like a general performance from her to win here today. F22, that is Dominika Meyer of Germany, from the Bayern Police and the Telesfinanz Regensburg club. She won Hanover this year, or last year rather, in 2:26.50, and she will be the leading German woman home. She might well yet, yes she will, set a massive personal best. Look at this, she's probably got about a minute and a half to go. She is going to run under 2:24, I think, is Dominika Meyer. What a run from her, the 32-year-old, being encouraged all the way there through the Brandenburg Gate. And is that Chris Thompson? It is. Chris Thompson left a picture.
Yes, Tomo.
Tomo, an Olympian for Great Britain in Tokyo 2021, is encouraging Meyer through. He's done a pretty good job, if indeed he was her pacemaker. And reasons to be cheerful for German distance running. Just going back to the men's result. Petros, the leading German home today, in 9th place, 2:04.58. So Petros, well, he was looking to improve his own personal best of 2:06.27. He did that by almost a minute and a half, albeit missing that European record, which was under 2:04. And Meyer here, well, she will come home, by the looks of things, in 10th place. Charlotte Purdue, by the way, in 9th place, 2:22.17 for Great Britain. That's a new personal best for her.
Good to see her back.
Ethiopians, though, filling 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of the top 8 places. And here comes the German champion for this year. What a run it is. What a brilliant run it is for Dominika Meyer.
And Tim, the qualifying time for the Olympics, 2:26.50, and she's well under that for the Olympic qualifying time for Paris.
Tape down that right hamstring and all. Superb performance from Meyer. And she's just run herself into the Paris Olympic team for Germany. Olympic Games marathon next year is on the 10th of August, by the way. Mark that in your diaries.
Well, Eliud Kipchoge put in a 5-star performance today. There was no world record, which looked on the cards for the first half of the race, at least a much more measured first half than last year. But he got home in the sunshine, was threatened. The gap was closing between the chasing pack, but there's the moment when he came home to take his 5th Berlin victory, 5 out of 6, and that's 16 wins in 19 marathons. An extraordinary performance from the greatest marathon runner in history. 38 years old. He turns 39 in November. 2:02.42 is the 8th fastest time in history. He now has 5 of the 8 fastest times of all time. So let's hear what he has got to say. How was it for you, Elliot?
For you, because you were on world record pace, you fell away, and then were you coming under pressure at the end?
Yes, I was really in a good way, but at the end of it, a little bit hiccups, but it's normal in a race.
What was going through your head during the first half of the race? Because it was looking really good, very fast paced, not quite as fast as last year. So many of us were thinking you can break the world record again.
I was expecting to do the same, but it's not come as I expected. But that's how sport is.
So even you can learn, shall we say, lessons from a win?
Absolutely, yes. I've learned lessons. I have won, but I did not break a world record. So it's going back again. Every race is a learning lesson.
And I know you always talk about regeneration, recovery after a race, but of course everybody's thinking of the Olympics and Paris. What does this experience tell you about your chances to become the first man ever to win 3 Olympic marathons?
I want to really concentrate and get all the experience for the 21 marathons and put all the experience in next year in Olympics in Paris and try to be in the podium or to win for the 3rd time ever and make history.
Thank you very much, Elliot.
Paris definitely on his mind. Just a slight air perhaps of disappointment there at not challenging the world record at the end, but full marks and still learning, Tim, still learning even at 38 years old.
Yeah, you know, we talked earlier on about how Elliot was going for a 3rd Olympic title during the race, and I wanted to say what I admire is that continual hunger. Now, this fella has become very, very wealthy through his fabulous sporting exploits in middle and long distance running. He has achieved it all: 2 Olympic golds, world titles, wins galore everywhere, and yet he wants more. He keeps that hunger. He wants to get up every morning and get on with the daily routine of training hard, that grind, that monastic lifestyle, and he deserves a huge pat on the back for retaining that hunger.
The race tide looking resplendent.
Yeah, 2 spectacular days today. Yeah, the German Parliament building there, looking quite marvellous in the sun that has now burnt off the early morning mist. But when they did start this morning at 9:15, Kipchoge, the defending champion, and Assefa, the defending women's champion, were both headed these victories of different styles. Kipchoge turning back all the challenges, coming home to victory by, a good slab, more than 30 seconds. Tigist Assefa, the performance of the day, smashing the world record of Brigid Kosgei by over 2 minutes, 2:11.53. And there's a slight breeze across the city if you stand up on one of the taller buildings, but down at street level the flags just hang limply. It is a glorious Sunday morning, still not even midday local time here in the German capital. And Chris, the reverberations of that performance from Tigist Assefa will head out around the world like ripples from a stone landing in a pond. I mean, it has been quite extraordinary, but confirmation of the results.
Yeah, 2:02.42, the important number for Eliud Kipchoge this morning in terms of time, but confirmation that was his 5th victory in Berlin. Congratulations too for the 2 new boys, Vincent Kepkemoi from Kenya in his first ever marathon, 2:03.13, and Tadesse Tekele, the young Ethiopian, coming through in 3rd place. Confirmation of the German, Amanal Petros, coming through, 2:04.58 on the first page there, the first German home. And excellent performances also from the likes of Henrik Pfeiffer, who was on the press conference. The 3rd German home, Samuel Fitfi, 2:08.28. 2:08.10, a reminder, is the Olympic qualifying time.
The first 9 going under 2:05 in that men's race. Amanal Petros, 9th with 2:04.58. But the women's winner, well, in a new world record, Tigist Assefa, setting spectacular new numbers. 2:11.53. Let's hear from her.
Tigist, today you have made history. How does that feel?
በጣም ደስተኛ ነኝ ምክንያቱም ይሄ ሪከርድ የሃርድ ወርከር ነው በጣም ደስታዬ ወደር የለውም እግዚአብሔር ይመስገን ነው ምለው እግዚአብሔር ስጦታ ነው ለኔ
Meine Freude ist grenzenlos.
Sorry,
in English.
Can we start it from the top? Today, Tigist, you have made history. How does that feel?
በጣም ደስተኛ ነኝ በጣም ወደር ያለው ደስታ ነው የተሰማኝ ምክንያቱም ይሄ የሃርድ ወርከር ውጤት ነው አምላኬን ነው ማመስገን የምፈልገው የእግዚአብሔር ስጦታ ነው ነው ምለው እኔ
I think that is the result of hard working which I have done for the last year.
You made such a big improvement. Did you expect to break 2 hours 12?
እውነት ለመናገር በዚህ ልክ ሰብረዋለሁ ብዬ አላሰብኩም ግን ወርልድ ሪከርዱን እንደምሰብር አምሹሮኝ ነው የመጣሁት
That I broke the record with such a result was not but in some form I wanted to have to not to break the record but not in such a category.
You have achieved such a wonderful victory and world record. Do you feel that you're now a favourite to win the Olympic title, the women's marathon in Paris next year?
ድሉን አግኝቻለሁ መረጣለሁ ብዬ አስባለሁ ወርልድ ሻምፒዮን አልፎኛል በመምጉዳይ ያገሬም በዚህ ጉዳይ የሚመለከታቸው ድሉን ይሰጡኛል ብዬ አስባለሁ ምክንያቱም ወርልድ ሻምፒዮን መመረጥ ነበረብኝ ድሉን አላገኘውም ነገር ግን በዚህ አጋጣሚ ይክሱኛል ብዬ አስባለሁ አንድ ድል ይቀረኛል ሹሮኜ ለመመረጥ
The decision lies in the hands of the committee members but I have set a point now which will not be ignored so I hope I will participate in the Olympic Games in Paris.
Tigist, I think they will find it very hard to ignore you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Well, yes. She'll be in the Olympic team. I don't think there's much doubt about that. Barring injury, she will get to the start line in Paris at the Olympic Games next year in August as very strong favourite for Olympic gold. Now, here's a little figure for you. When Abeid Bekele won the Olympic marathon in 1964 for Ethiopia, he ran 2:12:11. It was a world record. His time has just been beaten by Tigist Assefa, who has taken the win here in Berlin in 2:11:53. How time moves on. Confirmation of the win for Tigist Assefa, 2:11:53. Fabulous running from Chepkirui for second place. They're a tired-looking Sheila Chepkirui for Kenya. Magdalena Shauri broaching new ground, the Tanzanian there, 2:18:41 to make it onto the rostrum. And the first 8 women home going under 2:20. Brilliant packing from the Ethiopians in particular in the top 10. Good running too from Delvine Maringo, the former Kenyan for Romania in 12th place, 2:23. The German Dominika Meyer in 14th, the first German home. She may well too have run herself into a place in the German Olympic team. Fabienne Schlumpfluck, 2:25:27 in 15th for Switzerland. And the Americans, Frisbee and Jacqueline Gorgon, both there in the top 20 as well.
Just time to take a breath, really, isn't it? It's been breathless stuff in Berlin this morning, as so often it has. We've seen another chapter of history. It's the first I've had a women's world record here. The 13th time a world record has been set here in the German capital as the runners continue to flood over the finish line. Nearly 48,000, as we mentioned, started and crossed the start line a little over 2.5 hours ago, and there'll be plenty more out on the course for several more hours as the temperature starts to rise, continues to rise throughout the day here on this glorious Sunday morning. Personal bests, reasons for running, backstories, as always, all very personal.
In the green there, coming home wearing F47 is Anya Culling of Great Britain. She has a best of 2:34.45. That was in Copenhagen earlier on this year. She's going to be just outside that with Culling. This is still great running. These athletes coming home in around 2:36. That is about, if you don't mind it in non-metric, about 6 minutes per mile. 2:36. Still brilliant running. These are athletes who still have to train very, very hard indeed. Their lifestyles dominated by their vocational decision to become marathon runners and give it everything. And I think they would all know, Chris, that on a day like this with pretty much zero wind, with 12-13 degrees at the start time and not, you know, the temperature's climbing, but it's never become user unfriendly, has it? The temperature now in Berlin is about 17 or 18, even though the sun is bearing down, the late September sunshine. They will all know they'll never get better conditions than this.
Absolutely right. I think the keyboard operator who's putting in the results will be using the letters P and B quite frequently today. A lot of lifetime bests, I'm sure, for all of these runners. 2:36 is a very tasty time. That's a time that I could only dream of back in my marathon running days. Really very, very good indeed. 6 minute miling is not at all shabby. Great to see so many Kenyan fans here. They've taken over that stand, and the Ethiopian flag's out in evidence as well. The domination, Tim, of both these races, worth just reflecting that Kenyans and Ethiopians, so East Africans in the men's race, have now won 24 races. The last non-East African to win was Ronaldo da Costa back in 1998 in the men's race, and good old Irina Mikitenko in the women's in 2008, the last non-East African
now,
women's
I remember
winner.
that win of da Costa, the Brazilian, in 98, 25 years ago now. I think he ran 2:06.50, and I remember hearing about it and thinking, wow, 2:06.50, that's insane. But that's in days when anything under 2:10 was spectacular running. Now we're talking about the possibility in the next few years of a woman running under 2:10. 2:11.53, that winning time of Tigist Assefa this morning. It is just mind-blowingly powerful. It is a huge statement too for women stepping forward into the sunlight even further to wrench the big focus away from the likes of Eliud Kipchoge and the great male champions of years gone by. And, you know, I think that is the run of the day without any doubt. A brilliant run from Eliud, as you said, Chris, to win his 5th title. But a world record by over 2 minutes from Tigist Assefa is the headline.
Yeah, it's the headline. It's the story of the day. And I think we knew that, didn't we, from about 25-30 kilometres into the men's race. There's no doubt about it that Tigist Assefa was going to be the story of the day. She was comfortably inside world record pace for the entire race and just stretched away and showed all her 800 metre speed from all those years ago in the final few hundred metres of this race. Nice to see also, Tim, the first name on the race number of each athlete. There's Tim going through fittingly. That's a nice touch. Apologies if that's not a new thing, but I'm not sure I've noticed that before, to actually have your race number but also your name underneath. Great for the support.
Few races do it, but it is special, yes. Somewhere out there, Paula Radcliffe's having her little run round. I think Chris mentioned it earlier. She was asked just a couple of weeks ago to take a group round in 3:30, so Paula has got another 45-50 minutes of running to come just yet, assuming things have gone okay for the former world record holder. And I'll bet you, because she's pretty IT proficient, Paula, She'll know that her world record, as it was back in 2003 of 2:15.25, has just been bettered by some 3.5 minutes. And it is staggering. But these are the moments that burn themselves into your memory, Chris. The hard work for the previous 42 kilometres, of the previous 6 months, the build-up to this race, which so many of these athletes will have negotiated pretty well to get themselves to the start line and through to the Brandenburg Gate. That hard work is rewarded with memories and the applause and praise from the huge crowds here in Berlin. I mean, I think if you look at the